And there we are. Welcome in. Special Thursday. I guess that's a holiday edition. Not really a holiday edition, but the Jimmy Carter Celebration of Life activities happening in the U.S. today. U.S. equities are closed. If you're just getting up or just joining, welcome in. We're going to touch on a whole bunch of different topics today, a whole bunch of different ideas going into 2025. We're going to have a few guests come through. Rahim Alani is going to join us here in about a half an hour to talk about the Canadian side of things. We'll touch on a few sector type themes that we think might be worth watching going into 2025 on the Canadian side of the border, and of course small caps as well, because hey, it's Rahim. Michael Noss also going to join us as well with his predictions for 2025. You and I were just morning, by the way. You and I were just talking a little bit about Bitcoin here. We're teetering right now. Bitcoin's really the only thing we have to actually look at that's live this morning. Futures are live. But not going to be a lot of liquidity for the futures market. Bitcoin red on the day, 3 in a row here to the downside once again. But yeah, we are teetering right now on this support level. 91.5, 92,000 coming into play. Bottom end of the range coming in quickly here for Bitcoin. But this is going to be exciting. First time we've tried something like this, kind of a live discussion, roundtable podcast, if you will. So we'll have some fun.
And the perfect time of the year to kind of give our projections about where we see the market going, what some of the winners can be this year, some of the ideas that you have, maybe reflect a little bit about the trades or the lack of trades that we didn't take in 2024. Lots to talk about. Nice day to digest everything, Brendo.
Yeah, it's been a quick, it feels like, start to the year, although the market really hasn't done a heck of a lot. We're kind of chopping around here with a lot of uncertainties on the macro side of things, a lot of uncertainties with the U.S. Political side of things, although the election obviously finalized. But the tariff situation definitely not at this point. A lot of headlines to discuss in relation to Canada as well, obviously. Over the past couple of weeks, everyone is here.
Hey.
Neil is here. Sean is here. Joe is here. Adara is here. Good morning, guys.
I'm gonna tweet it out. We live, baby.
Yeah, baby, we're live.
Look at the 4 box. Hey, Adara, how's it going?
this.
Look, we got Adara here. There we go.
There's a story
There's Brendan
of a lovely lady.
Oh, lovely. Okay, yeah.
Is that how it goes? And
what it looks like.
I don't know the rest of the. Oh,
I'm just tweeting out. We live.
I don't know
baby, we live.
All of them in hair of gold, like their mother.
Is her mic on? Oh, we're already having mic issues.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be all good. Okay, yeah, so welcome here. It should be a fun day here. We've got the whole crew in. It's going to be welcome to, as Brendan said, hopefully we'll be conversational. We'll be back and forth. We're going to be looking at the chat. Welcome everybody that's here so far. 1,000 people joined in. We're just getting started. This should be a good one. Bitcoin, great point. It just broke 92 right now, guys.
yeah, and
So I don't know what everyone's opinion is on this.
when 9:30 opens up, the Canadian markets are still open. So there's ETFs in Canada, and there also is there's Hut 8, there's Hive. There's things that'll probably move around a little bit. So we might. Every now and then, if Bitcoin goes crazy, we might actually jump on over and talk specifically about that. But yeah, we got some picks lined up. If you guys have questions for us, obviously we can go into that. Cafe Philosophy, good morning to you as well. Darwin thinking 88K on BTC. You never know. And Armin in the chat saying BlackBerry. I guess that'll be open today as well. But yeah, it's going to be all about a casual atmosphere here today. So get your coffee ready. We'll have some trade ideas for you. For 2025, already a good start.
Ramin's going to do a little mending of some audio here, and we'll touch on a few things that are worth discussing. The overall, I think, theme coming out of 2024 going into 2025 was way bigger. The rally that we saw last year was way bigger than anyone expected. I mean, if you rewind the clock, we were sitting here going into 2024, coming out of 2023, and everyone was talking about how tech had moved up so much, and the rally was overdone, and it was going to be, or the market was going to need other areas to participate in order for things to continue. And then we saw just more of the same all year last year.
I remember we, like midway through the year, we started hearing about the rotation out of the Mag 7 and out of large cap tech and into some of these smaller mid caps. And where did that go? I mean, we kind of topped out here on the Russell 2000 while the NQ and the ES continued to make newer highs. So I haven't seen a real manifestation of that rotation trade yet, with most of the Mag 7 just hitting all-time highs about a couple of weeks ago. You had that Apple 260 touch, you had Tesla breaking through key resistance areas, as well as Amazon. Microsoft kind of had a bit of a softer year in 24, but a lot of that was pulled forward in 23 because of its association with ChatGPT. So Microsoft might be one to watch. Google as well, Bruno, hit all-time highs. So that rotation trade, you know, even though we had good spells for some of these small caps and the Russ, I don't think it was as consistent as maybe some people were hoping.
Yeah, I mean, to touch on or dig into Google here a little bit further, I think, you know, there's so many different, we've talked about it a lot, but there's so many different themes that you can discuss when it comes to Google. Yes, I think AI has definitely changed search going forward. I know personally, a lot of people around here, me personally, you know, I default do not go to Google anymore if I'm looking for something, you know, whether it's ChatGPT or some sort of AI. Perplexity is great, you know, for very detailed search. But it was this high. If you go back to July on Google, it was this high that I think that type of narrative really started to take hold, and we saw the sell-off pursue. But you raised a good point, and that's on the cloud side of things with both Amazon and Google. I was reading on the weekend, actually, that they both saw far more growth in 2024 on the cloud side than anyone else. So there's so many different aspects to Google as a company, or Alphabet as a company. That's just one of them.
Yeah, and Google's growing faster than AWS, faster than Azure. It's obviously the smallest of the three, but it's growing at the quickest rate.
Yeah.
And I want to keep an eye on this because we see exactly what's happening with AI. You're not building out your own data center off which you're training models and using inference. You're going to the cloud and paying somebody else who's already expended the CapEx to do that. So I think cloud continues to grow. It's kind of hand in hand with AI. We'll have to see exactly at what the growth rate is for cloud. It's been already kind of eye-watering the last few years.
Google being Google was late to the party. Some say they, you know, missed it entirely, but then when they did actually finally show up, it seems like they've really shown up. You were, you know, showing me this studio to access Gemini 2.0 here in Canada. We do it through this studio version that Google has come out with, and you've had great results from it.
It's fantastic. Look, I got to be, hey, I'll just call a spade a spade. I was wrong. I was wrong about Google. I thought their product was slow.
I wouldn't say you're wrong. I think at that time, you know, there was definitely flaws.
I didn't see a pathway, though, Brando. I thought the company was too bureaucratic, too stuck in its own way. I don't want to use some of the trigger words, but it was definitely very politically affiliated. And I feel that there's been a marked change with this 2.0. I told you that Jason Calacanis spoke well about this on the All In podcast, which precipitated me to get in and give it a try. And I liked it. And quite frankly, this is how I access it. If we're talking about 2.0, you got to go to a specific website here. It's aistudio.google.com, and it gives you an opportunity to use all their different models. Some experimental. We got Gamma 2.27. Each one does different things. Each one is programmed for a certain task. So they're not interchangeable. For example, if I was to use the one deep thinking one that asks itself questions to write a story for me, to write an article or summarize an article, it's not necessarily good at that. You're gonna have to figure out which language model is good at what and use it accordingly.
There's so many options now. I mean, there was that note that just came out this morning from Jensen saying that Elon is really doing, you know, some of the most impressive work on the AI side of things with Grok right now. I was telling you, I didn't even renew my ChatGPT subscription for this month. Just because I found myself actually trying some of the other options out there, and there's so many to try now that it's worth a shot. Sean, you were talking a little bit about this 200 level for Alphabet going back to yesterday's show, but I mean, it's still a great year for this stock.
Yeah, I mean, look, I just used ChatGPT, so maybe we have some biases here. But what I put in there was what was the performance in 2024, and we can say, like, you know, maybe Google was late to the game or whatever. It's great to see that we have Sharif's sort of stamp of approval on the stock now, or at least on Gemini. But as Brendan just pointed out, we were just 1 day away from all-time highs, and then yesterday happened. So to talk about a stock, there's handfuls, pretty much 95% of the S&P 500 is nowhere near right now these all-time high levels like Google is. So Google's been crazily outperforming everything. I asked ChatGPT, you know what it said? As of January 2025, so right now, Microsoft from 2024 is 12.93% gained in 2024. Google's 37% return. So 3 times the investment over the last year, where apparently Google has been failing. Over the last year, we've had Waymo driving around in circles.
I gotta fail like that.
We had Gemini getting slapped around on this very show. You know, and it's still 3x'd Microsoft.
It gets better, by the way.
What?
You know why it's even better? It's doing all of this while maintaining a flat PE that's relatively cheap compared to the other Mag 7, everybody.
It's something else.
Like, what are we talking about here? Look at the historical PE. It's still sitting, it's like 25 half or like 26. It's still underneath 30. When everyone talks about the overheated valuations, you also, despite everything Sean just showed you in terms of its gains relative to Softy, relative to the market as well, you're still trading at a very, very reasonable multiple. So it's, and here's the other thing. You just had Jensen come in here and talk all about and poo-poo this quantum space. Well, if all the names that don't have anything going, and it takes 10, 15, well, 5, 10, 15, he's at 15, 30, some don't agree. If the quantum is gonna take some time before we actually get something out of it, well, you've got 2 companies, one of which we'll get to later, IBM, and Alphabet, which are on the same track. And they've been spending and they've been developing for a long time. So you know you're gonna get that future play. And on top of it, you're gonna get a still quality growing business that prints money, trades at a reasonable multiple, and you don't have to worry about an ugly looking chart trying to pick it up on those bottoms. So, you know, I think we all probably like this potential pullback because it gives you an opportunity to get a little bit more into Alphabet. And I'll admit, like I like ChatGPT. I can't say that I'm loyal to one or the other. Like I'll use Gemini, I'll use Perplexity. If I'm on my phone, I have to readily admit, if I'm on my phone, I've run into the habit of using Metas because I'll just be in WhatsApp already. So it's like, they're all there and it's all the same leaders. But I love the fact that you get that cheap multiple. Not cheap, but that relatively cheap multiple when you're at these highs. Like that's a good look to me for Alphabet.
All right, we're going to get the mic issue sorted out.
I think so.
Oh, it's sorted out? So let's go. Yeah, let's go to the 4 box.
I want that box back.
Yo, Fabian. Fabian is here.
Advanced winning.
All right, Adara, how's your mic?
Let's test it.
What, I see you got a second cup. You got a little tasty treat there. What is that?
It is a vanilla bean frappe.
Vanilla
And it's
bean
just a
frappe.
blended
coffee, and it basically just tastes like coffee. And I'm gonna stop
now
saying
I hear.
coffee now, but it's good. It's solid.
No, I
It's
think
a
now,
drink.
good. I think now we hear you. So
Oh, can we hear it?
Yeah,
Oh,
it sounds great.
that's great.
that's
Have you
good.
ever had a matcha frappuccino?
Oh my God, I love matcha frappuccinos, but they don't really do them at second cup. Like Starbucks, I think like I've definitely had them here. I've probably had them on the show. I enjoy a matcha frappuccino, but I like to add more matcha to my matcha frappuccino because I taught Sean a life hack. If you're already getting a matcha drink, you can add more matcha and they cannot charge
Yeah.
you more.
Yeah, that
They
was
cannot. So
that was
good.
I like
I'm not
that.
well versed in
Great.
the coffee game. There's Americano, and that's about it.
That's it, yeah.
That's all you
There's ways when you can step up the game for sure. Yeah, you can have fun with it. Absolutely.
Keep it back. I found something interesting here, though, as we were talking about Google, and it's just an industry comparison from a PE standpoint, which I found pretty interesting. If we can pull up can we pull up my screen here too, or yeah, we'll just take a look at this. So yeah, just a comparison to Google, Meta, Visa, MasterCard, Netflix, and just the industry average, which I found interesting as I just stated. considering we were talking about Google from a PE standpoint, and it's still being relatively cheap on the street. So yeah, I mean, Sean has this as one of his largest holdings, as well as I. So it's good to see that the street is perceiving this well, and that we're not too far off of those all-time highs. So yeah, holding up very well is Google, and looking forward to seeing what's coming to come in the next couple months. That's for sure. Yeah.
More thematical areas to kind of discuss as we head into. Let's go through formatting here for a second, just so everybody knows what to expect here today. Best way to kind of take this in is we'll talk a little bit about 2024, best performers, worst performers, and then talk about what's to come going into 2025. In the middle there, we'll get Raheem, as I mentioned. We'll get Michael Noss coming through with a few ideas of their own. I want to touch on Tesla specifically, but also EVs in general, heavily discussed on the show pretty much every day.
Oh, yeah.
But Tesla on a daily chart getting to a point, as we were talking a little bit about yesterday, where it's coming into interesting levels once again. There's so many catalysts, behind this stock, behind this company right now. Elon firing on all cylinders as he typically does, but going into 2025, one that's really, really interesting, I think.
What's really going to be interesting to me to see if it manifests in 25 is the intersection between AI and robotics. So we see Jensen with his Jetson microprocessor. They're supposed to be small enough to be able to put on mobile devices like droids or whatever else you want to attach it to. So we're going to be able to have localized assessment and localized inferencing of large language or even small language models. Are going to be local to the device that they're being put on. So very interesting overlap there. Obviously, quantum was one that I was keeping an eye on. Jensen kind of put the kibosh, I don't want to say the kibosh, but he basically said, we're looking at a 30-year window, maybe even a little bit less, 20 years or so before this thing catches wind. Whether or not that puts a damper on the trade for quantum into 2025 remains to be seen, but that was definitely one that I kept my eye on, with Google obviously leading with their Willow chip there, Brendo.
Yeah, definitely one that we need to talk about a lot going into 2025, guys. But I think, if you missed it or you're just joining us, Jensen came out, I think it was late yesterday, but a lot of people reposting it this morning, basically saying that it's Elon that's actually doing the heavy lifting right now on the AI side of things, and it's Elon that's actually winning the race at this point as far as AI work. Specifically, Grok, has made leaps and bounds as well. But thoughts on Tesla here, guys, coming out of an amazing year for them?
Well, look, I love Tesla. Maybe not so much as we are concerned with the price action on Fartcoin right now, but look,
Fartcoin it's bouncing pretty good.
I'll put that aside for a second so we can talk about
It's actually
Tesla.
bouncing pretty good.
We're bouncing off support. The 81, I don't mean to laugh at it, but we were just, when we came in and we started, like Bitcoin was trying to bounce off 92, and then Fartcoin was at a support at 81 cents, and then it actually started to bounce. So you probably heard my live mics talking about it there. But look, Tesla, I have some short-term, I feel like I'm long-term bullish on Tesla, short-term bearish. That's probably the easiest way to think about it. Everyone got the benefit of, I don't know why this trend line doesn't go all the way on the weekly, but it was a massive trend break off of the 200, the 50 period, both of those when it was at 200. Like, that was a gift. And I think when you get opportunities on a stock like this to buy, you go ahead and do it. I just don't know how much I like it all the way up here. I think you've got you've had topping tail candle in the weekly, and then you've had what looked like a potential reversal to the prior high, and then we just sort of continued lower. So a retest of 350 makes a lot of sense. We were just talking about P's. These guys are still triple digit. So obviously valuation is going to be a bit of a concern here for Tesla. It just doesn't shock me if you do have a little bit of a sell that cannot hold in those mid 300s and we get some kind of a deep retracement. I think 2025 is the year of no more 20% gains on the NASDAQ and increased volatility. And in that type of an environment, I think you want to be ready for some bigger dips. Like, I think when you're looking to dip by a stock, especially one with maybe not the best valuation or most reasonable valuation, you should just be prepared to wait for a really good price. And I feel like Tesla is in that mode where it might give it to us this year, somewhere in that 300. I definitely like the 50-period moving average. I can't say at what point it would get there this year. I guarantee you this much. I'm 99% certain that I will buy Google shares in my personal account or more of them before I'm buying any Tesla shares. Something extreme would have to happen to get me on the bid of Tesla.
Yeah, so I was just looking up some Farcoin. Yeah, so that went down to 81 cents there. This is what we were talking about. And then all of a sudden, nice little bounce up here into 83 and change. Still down 25%. I mean, this has been... But I was saying to Neil, like, and this is what I was actually going to get at with quantum computing when we discuss it, which will be pretty soon, was just the fact that, look, we had this huge move. Sure, it's chopped in half. It's a big one. But, you know, this coin was 3, 4, 5 cents in October. Like, if you're in this name, I mean, just get out, man. It's 83 cents. Like, come on. What else are we supposed to do here? But cryptocurrencies today not treated very well in the last little bit here. Ooh, I got to even refresh it. That says Bitcoin at 97,000. There it is right here. So a little bit of a downside push over the last 24 hours. Dogecoin, a big one, down 7%. Solana down 5% as well. Cardano, I got stopped out of a trade yesterday, I think breaking... Oh, it was 95, I think, off the look back, but down 8% on that one as well. Yeah, so some blood in the waters over here. And that here's the bigger look on Coinbase. I mean, you're about to break right now. So for a trade coming into next year, and we're going to get to all this as we go, but Bitcoin right now is going to be at a level where, you know, averaging in, thinking about doing something isn't unbelievable, you know, in the realm of a couple $1,000s from here. I mean, whether or not you get to 90 or 88, I think that's pretty good. And then I don't know, man. I threw out that question, you know, when we were around, I don't know what it was, 90,000. Yeah, I heard you. Yeah. 90. I don't know what it was. We had the question was 150 or 50, and 150 was really heavily the favored there, and it may still be. I wonder what people's opinions would be now. I was leaning towards, I was very bullish on crypto, but still leaning towards the fact that I thought we could maybe see 50 before we saw 150. And right now, I don't think that 50 is going to come into play, but a nice little break down below 88 would help that case. Because then, Neil, I mean, 76.
Sign me up.
You know, yeah, exactly. And this is what I mean. People are going to start buying these dips. So whether or not 50 is inevitable, I mean, you got to get through so many big levels. And then there's not too much at the top. If you get back going up there, we were only there for a couple of weeks.
You know what else is inevitable?
What's that?
Hot fire at the... But the Bills are inevitable.
Oh, yeah.
Hot fire at the screen from Madeira.
Oh.
Hi guys, I made a couple graphics here for this 2024 year in review. A lot of them have already been posted as well on our Trader TV research account, where I usually post market updates or cool infographics like this. You can just follow us at TTV Research on X. In the meantime, we're going to take a look at this first graphic of the day, which is the top S&P 500 performers in 2024. Now, one of the biggest things I want to talk about here is the fact that 3 of these 500 at the end of 2023. Palantir and Vistra, so number 1 and number 2 performers, they were both added to the S&P 500 in 2024. So they were added and then became the top 2 performers. This one as well, GEV, this is actually a spinoff. We know GE had the spinoff there between GE Aerospace and GE Vernova. So GE Vernova here, in its first year as its own ticker, actually getting the number 4 spot for growth. And then Axon, which was already on the S&P 500, was actually added to the NASDAQ this year. So AXON, GEV, VST and PLTR all having really big years. The other ones on this list are not as surprising, especially NVIDIA and Broadcom. We know they both had really great years, and Broadcom had a stellar December 2024, but UAL was maybe a little bit surprising here in the industrial sector. So UAL, keep an eye on these airlines. We know Michael Noss talked about the strength of the Jets ETF last year, so maybe give some of these airlines a look heading into 2025. What's the look, guys?
Yeah, you know what? We talk about those. Some of those aren't going to be that surprising.
Yeah.
But there's something to keep in mind, specifically with Vistra and GE Vernova. By the way, Vistra, not to be mistaken, there's like a Canadian financial company with the same name that obviously is not Vistra Energy. But no, GE Verona and Vistra, while we've been getting all this, hey, the next wave of energy is going to be nuclear, And everyone's concerned with, and don't get me wrong, like I'm the same way. Like I have SMR, and everyone's been looking at, I mean, Oklo is another example. There's all these potential nuclear runners, small modular reactors, and the new wave. You're getting deals with the big hyperscalers, and you're going to have to power these data centers. And you've had two stocks which have been performing brilliantly that are in this space that get no coverage. That's Vistra and that's GE Vernova. Now, I happen to have shares of GE Vernova because I own GE when they did the spinoff, so that's how it works. I never actually bought any. I've never bought any. But why not? Like, if you're going to say the nuclear is going to be the future, there's URA out there. And I'm not saying buy this at sky high. I'd actually have to look up. I'm guaranteeing you GE Vernova probably doesn't trade at a reasonable multiple based on the move that it's had. But this is another way to get exposure into something which has that growth aspect. It's the same principle as looking at Alphabet or IBM for quantum and tempering that with your Rigettis of the world. And I think you can do the same thing here. Yeah, we all like the massive runs that we've seen in SMR and some of those other names. But hey, you can look at these on pullbacks as well. GE Verona. I'm actually considering it myself. I got to look to see how many. I forget how much I actually got of this when they did the spinoff. But it's a great looking chart. I think you got to look for some value in an emerging space. It's not going anywhere. I don't think it's a flash in the pan because I think nuclear has an awesome chance to stay. There's no chance. Like when they talk about like one chat GPT question takes 10 times the amount of power of one Google search. I mean, come on. You know, there's going to be alternative forms of energy that have to work here, and we don't always have to chase the crazy one. You can just go with, I guess, quote unquote, the best of breed like Vistra and GE Verona on dips.
I wanted to say the name that surprised me the most on there was the Jets ETF and UAL being on that list. I mean, we had talked about sort of, trying to pick and choose what airline and I don't know. We talked about the top 5 airlines or all the top 5 holdings here, and you had a great year. What was for the airlines? I mean, you did have a lot of names got hit there in August, right? So that was extremely dramatic as volatility picked up. But then from that bottom, like $17 up to 26, like that's quite the outperform there. You have from, last January, I mean, I guess depends on where we pick the date. I guess we try to pick it exactly. $19 up to 25, 26 bucks. So, give it 25% gain. It's a nice little move there for the Jets ETF. And again, good thing we talked about that because UAL, I don't know if many people are on this name. I mean, even some of the cruise ships were absolutely huge. CCL, RCL, Norwegian, everything. But like this is crazy. Like the sort of the up move that we had seen in this name again from August. Like this is the thing about second half stories. Like what we're experiencing now in the market is just a thing. Like this was doing nothing. The airlines were doing nothing all year until all of a sudden ignite off to the races there in August straight. Like I'm not even sure. I'll have to figure this out because what the catalyst was that ran this from $40 up to $103. That's insane. It looks like that looks like, does that not, like we talk about how airlines, and I don't know, Joe or Adair, anybody's opinion on it. I know you've mentioned you don't like them as an investment. Like I've never considered that as an investment either. But
my thing doesn't work. I just wanted to hit the fail for myself. It didn't work. So.
Well, then I would have to say that is a fail then, if that's not working.
Oh.
All right, we're gonna figure it out. We'll get the 4-box. There it is. Okay. Joe, does that move take you by surprise? I mean, I don't ever hear us really talking about airlines.
You know what? And we don't, Sean, because everything with COVID, right? We know that everything was shut down, and it was kind of a sketchy sector to be in. But as of right now, everything's looking absolutely amazing on it. We're up. Let's see, because I was curious about it too. So just from those August lows, Sean, we're up over 179% on UAL. So whatever was driving that is really driving it because we're up quite a bit. And I mean, going back to business travel, so I guess that could be a positive catalyst as well too. Maybe it was just a little bit laggard. I know COVID is behind us now, but we know how devastated the airlines were, and just travel in general. So just looking back from that front, an absolute beautiful recovery here on UAL. And from an investment standpoint, I've never even personally looked at it in that type of perspective. So it's looking good. Would I be buying anything necessarily up here? No, but again, just wait for those pullbacks. We do know that the market is starting to draw down a little bit, down 5% or so off those all-time highs. So looking to get involved in these space, how could you not with the performance it's put up for the past 6 months or so? Yeah.
Great,
I mean, I have a look on Boeing here actually as well.
Sure, go ahead, yeah.
The trading view keeps disconnecting, but basically I actually think this is probably an idea I like going forward into 2025. And I say that because, like, yes, are we removed from highs? Absolutely. Are there a lot of concerns here with regards to the fact that planes are falling, doors are falling off, Dawn soap is being used where it shouldn't? Absolutely. But there are a couple of technical levels I like, so we're going to get into that. So for one, this is, and I watch this stock a lot, like on an intraday basis. I like the fact that we were able to, and I'm trying to find this level here, sorry, that 163, right? So we have this as support a couple times, support. Then we reject it, we've reclaimed that 163 level. I really like that. Now, this anchored VWAP is actually from here, that when we had that door falling off back in January. That's where this anchor VWAP is from. Now, we've actually crossed about it on the daily chart. We're almost back above it again. I have another anchor here from like that most recent kind of crash, but a little bit more inconsequential. Basically, what I'm saying is I like this level. Now, I think if I go to the weekly chart as well, I did do a little bit of analysis on this. We do obviously have some, lower lows, lower highs, but I think if we can reclaim this area just below 200, that 196, that would be, it would be a higher high, and B, it would also be reclaiming that support resistance area of that 196 in the weekly. So I would like us to have that 196 reclaim. I also do think Kelly Ortberg is a great choice as CEO. People seem to enjoy him. And even when you have airline CEOs at their earnings report saying, we vouch for Kelly, we believe in Kelly, I think that is a great sign. I think the fact that the airline CEOs are bullish on Kelly Ortberg mean that we should probably be bullish on Kelly Ortberg and bullish on Boeing. Again, I'm not saying let's go on the plane right now and get involved, but I'm saying I think that 196 level, should it hold on a closing basis on the weekly, I think that could be a really nice opportunity. That is my take on BA there, on the airlines.
Yeah, I really like that. Dara, we do have their earnings coming up on the 28th of January. I wanted to ask you this too. So from a fundamental standpoint, what would we want to see from Boeing in order for this price action to continue? And because we are off those all-time lows, so what would you see from what would you want to see from a fundamental standpoint in Boeing in their earnings report, like deliveries, et cetera?
Well, I think we know the deliveries are not going to be great. I think what we want to see here is just confidence from Kelly Ortberg that we're not going to have these strikes, that things are, I guess, coming together in a factory perspective. We know he's been visiting the factories, which I actually think is huge.
Really huge.
So I think if we continue to basically see the fact that Kelly Ortberg is willing to work, that he's willing to get this company back together, which I think he is, then I think we actually have a really good chance here. And there's a reason I chose Boeing and not, I considered looking at Starbucks as well if I was going to look at Boeing, but that 170 level, Neil and I have talked about this extensively, is wild. And I'm even seeing people in the chat say, Boeing will get to 170, and you could be short into 170, but you do not want to be holding that short once it gets to 170, because it will bounce. Now, will that level break? It could. I'm not going to say it's indestructible, but I think it's worth noting the strength there, the fact that as Pillsbury in the chat said there are buyers at that 170. And then I think also too, if you're going to compare Boeing to Starbucks, two companies that have really struggled this year, that have had CEO changes, I think the Starbucks turnaround is going to take a little bit longer because I actually think the changes they're making, and I like Brian Niccol, I have no issue with Brian Niccol, but I think that you're going to have a little bit of revolt from Starbucks customers as a Starbucks customer. I mobile order. I don't want to be like, oh, you can't mobile, we're not going to prioritize mobile orders anymore. We're not going to be able to make as many customizations in their drinks. I think that he fundamentally misunderstands Starbucks customers. I think he'll get there, but I don't think it's going to be overnight. And I think with what Kelly Ortberg has to do with Boeing, though it's obviously a much more monumental task, I think it makes more sense, and you're not going to have the customer revolt because your customers are airlines. That's my take on Boeing.
I want to jump in for a quick thing, but I also have to note something about this double shot of Randy. Am I crazy?
It's true.
Or does Randy have more of a tan when he's in Sean's shot?
It's the light is.
Because I think the light.
No, it's because where he's standing. I
Neil,
guess the
you're not
lighting.
crazy.
No, it's
I
different
don't
lighting.
think it is crazy.
Different lighting.
So obviously, nice move. I want to talk about Boeing just in one part of the context. I think you also have to look at What often gets ignored as a core part and a good part of Boeing's business is going to be their involvement in defense and their effect in the defense market. Because I think part of what's holding it down is the bleed that you've been seeing in some of the defense names. Now, there's this concern that you're going to have the Doge cutting big-time government spending. There is no way for them to meet their goals without cutting in the defense sector. And if that's the case, we've seen an absolute drop-off in Lockheed. Like, look at how far this is down. I think when you have a sell the news event after the inauguration, if there aren't those types of cuts in the first half of the year, or it looks like they're not making progress, and the wars don't end, and all the conflict stays where it is, historically, unfortunately, that's the way that things tend to go. I think you start to see a bit of a bounce. And if Lockheed starts to go, I guarantee you Boeing's going to start to make a move. I recently bought some Boeing myself, but I'm eyeballing this for like a post-election kind of reversion trade, because I think there's a there, for lack of a better term, for something like an LNT, and I think Boeing fits into that. We got some super chats, so hopefully we can get to some of these, because there's 2 super chats, and maybe we'll all take a shot at Kyle Burdett. Thank you, Kyle, because he asked, how long did it take to develop the ability to trade without emotion? I have too large of an LFT average in 2024 by being controlled by greed. Greed is my worst emotion to control. Advice on locking in profits without FOMO. And then the second one here, this is an easy one to add from Nick W., and we'll talk about the LFT thing in a second. Soxel looks like a good long-term entry here. Thoughts? I think if you're looking at Soxel, you need to have an opinion on, what I want to know from you is, well, what do you think of NVIDIA for semiconductors? And you can see the very nice upward trend on the daily chart, holding those highs. And here is the underperformance of Soxel. The major difference is how much NVIDIA that they hold. So I think it's an important question that you have. If you are a bull on NVIDIA, then you should be looking to invest, I think, in SMH, because A, it's been performing better and it's got more NVIDIA in it, so it's going to have a better representation of the semi market. If you think that NVIDIA is overcooked, then this is the perfect vehicle to look for a bottoming breakout. I happen to be an NVIDIA bull, so I'm not really that much in favor of Soxel. I'd much rather be an SMH because I still believe in NVIDIA. But I think there's a very big difference. Like, you got to form that kind of an opinion first. And then to Kyle Burdett's question, you know what? To be honest, like, I've always been, like, my personality is a little bit more level-headed, but the 2 things happened to me in my first couple of months of trading, and then my first year of trading, it happened sort of again, where I ended up in like an exorbitantly large position that both times I didn't see coming. One had to do with like a default setting and some overfills, and the other one had to do with kind of like a black swan. And that essentially scared, and the realization after I traded out of them, that when you're in that moment, there is nothing you can do but handle business. And both those 2 times, I looked back at what had happened in those trades, and one of them where I won and one of them where I lost, and both times, had I simply been calm, my outcome would have been 2-3x better. And learning that lesson the hard way a couple of times kind of put in that instilled into me, be calm. And the more bigger the moment is, the more calm you want to be, the more you want to focus on your plan of action, because that's all there is to it. Have a plan of action, then execute that plan. And I think it starts from having a plan of action. If you know the steps that you're supposed to take, then you can always lean back on them. But if you don't have a definitive plan, I want to do this here, I want to make this decision at this point, I'm looking at this metric or this indicator, and I've got to decide if the trade's still valid, if it breaks this. If you've done all of those things going into a trade, then you can lean back on that because you're just executing at each level, and then not Dan Campbelling the moment when it comes to you.
Oh, Dan Campbell.
I had to throw that in there.
Yeah, I'm going to get the buy. It should be interesting to see what happens there in the NFL playoffs. We do have, I mean, I'm not sure if we're ready to go back over the desk, but speak about the NFL playoffs. If everything goes according to plan, which I think, I just laid -10 with you guys. So, I mean, I'm thinking the Ravens. We opened up our little FanDuel account there. We saw what little money we had. And we put it on. We got some money on the Ravens -10. I got the Packers +4.5. I got the Chargers on the money line,
And
I have Chargers under that game under 42.5. What do you mean and?
did you say the Bills yet?
No, I did not. So I'll tell you why. And then I have the Rams. I think the Rams beat. Who are they playing on Monday night? I bet against them. But anyway, that's going to be a good one. Vikings. Yeah. So the Vikings, I think, is a fraudulent 2 seed. So we'll see if they can go.
You not put any money on my Bills?
Fraudulent.
Oof.
So the thing about
Wow.
yeah, fraudulent 2 seed. They just lost. Brendan's not.
I'm hurt right
Brendan's
now.
not into football, but they just lost to Detroit like 38-3 or something like that last week in a must-win game for the bye. Right. So that's why I'm thinking they're a little bit fraudulent. But Neil, the thing about it is the odds aren't that great for the Bills, man. It's like -300 or something.
We're gonna
like
destroy
that.
them.
I know you're gonna, but I didn't even look at what the spread was. It's 9, I think. You already have that bet. Raheem, what do you got looking on for this week?
I got to support my Ravens, as we all know. Lamar's got to prove it. Like he shows up, and when there's a bunch of cameras on, something happens every single season. And so I'm hoping this year that it's not going to be the case, and I just have PTSD from Ravens Steelers. It's playoff game, important game, Ravens Steelers, and then with 7 seconds left to go, Russell Wilson's down by 27, and he scores 27 points.
Right.
And it's just it happened. Like, not him particularly, but the Steelers somehow do that all the time. But I'm gearing up for a potential match in Buffalo next week. Neil and I are going to hop in a car and go eat some chicken wings at Duff's and cheer on our respective teams. I'm joking, we're not. Unless Duff wants to sponsor us, send it our way. And Neil and I will get on a car and we'll do a Trader TV live.
Could happen.
Any chicken
I'm
wing
down with
place
that.
in Buffalo that wants to throw it down, I'm just taking a call for Brendan here.
Chicken and waffles.
Sponsor us.
Anything.
We'll come down. We'll watch. You can come talk to us about stocks, and I'll be chirping Neil about his Bills losing, and my Ravens are going to win in 2 weeks.
Yeah, you
might
don't
be
want to
3
be
feet of
wearing Ravens
snow,
gear
but
when we go
whatever.
down there if we do that.
We'll make it there.
January.
Car sponsor as well. Get us in a car.
Winter tires.
Winter tire sponsor. We're here. We're here for all. We're open for business,
It'll be
guys.
fun.
All kinds of.
It's a holiday, so we're making it rain today. Let's
All
go,
kinds
boys.
of opportunity.
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of a
Hello,
weird
Michelin?
one because it's.
Hello, Michelin?
Exactly.
Sean's trying to get some winter tires.
No, yeah, Michelin was phoning here. They're trying to get a deal going on over here right now.
You already have winter tires.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Raheem's here. He's jumping in. Appreciate you coming by.
It's a holiday, so let's do it.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange one because it's going to be a one-off. So we'll enjoy it, I guess, while it lasts. We'll talk a little bit about the Canadian side of things here as well and get your perspective on not only what happened last year, but what we're going to look for going into this year. I mean, side note, we were just talking about BlackBerry, and yeah, by the way, BlackBerry looks great. If anyone hadn't looked at that chart for
looks
quite some time,
okay.
that's a daily chart of
Looks
BlackBerry.
great.
I don't even I was saying to you, I don't even really know what they do at this point, but I mean, it's 2001 all over
Yeah,
again.
no, that's what we were saying.
Yeah.
It's 2001, and look at BlackBerry, look at Celestica, get your big boy pants on, and go buy
Yeah.
those stocks because we're channeling stocks that we were buying when we were like 19 years old.
Yeah, what's going on? So
Buying those stocks.
from a theme perspective, first off, give me your thoughts here on 2024 as far as Canada was concerned.
Canada had an interesting year from the equities point of view. The markets have been robust-ish. Everything's obviously intrinsically linked to the U.S. and everything that happens there. And now that we've entered 2025, a little bit of political turmoil we've had here. I mean, we might be getting acquired. There's some bankers lining up on that M&A deal to see if we can sell Canada to the U.S. I don't know how that's going to go, but that's being looked at. In addition, there's tariffs that are going to impact everything from the price of watermelons and tomatoes all the way up to oil and gas, but particularly gas that's going to flow. Critical minerals, like the Premier of Ontario's talked about. There's a lot of things that have those salient touch points. And then just to top it all off, the Prime Minister of Canada resigned.
Yeah.
Because he didn't
If
want
anyone
to.
missed that, by the
Yeah,
way.
so we are Prime Minister-less right now. So if you want to come get us in Canada.
If anyone's looking for a job, we have one open.
Yes.
You mentioned a couple things. I want to touch on natural gas specifically because it's at a huge move. All of the individual equities, huge move. They've been straight up since the summer, basically. From the tariff point of view, I mean, energy as a whole is one thing, but from the tariff point of view, let's maybe break down oil and natural gas?
Sure. So oil and gas, I mean, the way those two commodities, they are specifically different. And a lot of companies do have a breakdown of 70-30 oil gas. Some are 100% gas, some are 100% oil, obviously. But the amount of liquid that we can send down from Canada into the U.S., I think is going to be actually an interesting negotiation play if whoever leads Canada does that. The Premier of Alberta, specifically, I was at a lunch that she spoke at, and she said, no, we're just going to continue business as is because we make so much money sending our liquid down to the U.S. So in times like this, like specifically right now, because the weather is so cold, there is a exorbitant amount of gas that is sold out because it is so cold. So there's a bigger number on the gas side that'll take place in this kind of short-term period.
Yeah.
Oil is, everyone knows the price of oil, but gas is a little bit different, specifically around cold weather time.
Yeah.
So you're going to start to see gas move up right now, or you've seen it move up right now, and that'll probably continue for the next, call it Q, maybe Q and a half, and then oil will, take its place back again.
What does that look like on our end at that point? If what we're hearing, 20, 25%, whatever it's going to be, actually comes through, what does that look like on our end as a consumer?
As a consumer, if the actual tariffs come in, just overall market, I mean, if you think about it logically, we're a cold weather country. And so, yes, our oil and gas flows, and that's great. And if you want to charge us tariffs, we'll charge you tariffs, so we'll make a bunch of money. But if you drill all the way down, we don't grow grapes and watermelons and tomatoes and those sorts of things because it's just not conducive in the winter. And so you're going to bring a lot of those products up from the States. And so just imagine 25% gets added on to the price of whatever good you want to call it that's coming from the States. That's going to find its way through the economy. So,
all right, a few charts here. I just brought up Enbridge.
Yeah.
I mean, this is July. I was going through a few of the individual stocks that I actually personally own. This is one of them, and I had no idea. But like, what a back half of the year that a stock like Enbridge is at.
Yeah, and again, these are larger cap names. Like I talked to my dad about stocks like this. Because these are
typically not exciting.
Yeah. So he's like, "What do you think about Enbridge?" I'm like, "Dad, I don't know." He loves them. He loves stocks that pay this. There's dividends. There's all these juicy things. There's bottom line, and there's earnings that come with these things. And again, Enbridge is going to be it's a top tier name in Canada. It's a company that's just generating massive amounts of cash right now because of all things related to where the market is with the price of gas.
On the oil side of things, you brought MEG here, MEG.
That was one that has, again, because it's an oil stock versus a gas heavy stock, it's probably lower on that. It's not at its 52-week high, of course. It's a stock that's around $25. It's traded between 20 and 30. If you look at the chart from a couple of years ago, I remember looking at it during COVID, and I'm like, this seems a little low for a company like MEG, and where it's gone up to, it's crossed $30 this year. So it's a nice name, and it has pulled back. So if you do believe in the oil trade and you do your homework on where Canada is situated on the oil and gas landscape with respect to our friends south of the border, that might be a name where you might be able to pick up some delta going into the new year.
And back at, this level, it essentially started 2024 at, once again, around 24, 25. So yeah, it looks great. What is that, KEL?
Yeah, KEL. That's a name I quite like as well. And that's a name, like, look at that chart in the last, call it month and a half. That's gone from, and that, to be honest, that's been if you're just a trader, and I'm not a trader by any means, but that's a name that I traded just because you'd see these swings and it would go from 620 to 7 in a couple of, a short period of time, and like within 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 days. Yeah. It's not a huge volume name, but it's a name, like, you just look at that, you're able to swing trade that. Now it's gotten back up to its, 52-week high, somewhere around there, trading around 740, 750, I believe. I think it was 750 yesterday. That's its 52-week high for sure. And you're looking at a name that's up 50% on the year at a mid-cap kind of size.
And, oh, by the way, 12, count them, 12 days in a row straight higher for KEL. So I want to keep an eye on PEY. Tell us about that one.
Same thing, Pedro. Again, that's a name where you're going to catch that top end. It's a big gas name. And if you look at that chart, I'm just looking at it now. I didn't go that far back. And you see that bottom there. Wow. That's a name that's, getting back up to its 52-week highs. So if you believe in the gas trade, these gas names are going to continue to go. If you think the gas is going to have a pullback right now because consumption might marginally reduce, depending on where you end up on that landscape. That's a name that's gone up precipitously in the last couple of weeks.
Let's talk about mining here, specifically from a higher standpoint. Talk a little bit about the tariffs again, and not necessarily gold. We touch on gold all the time, but I mean, there's a lot of other metals I think people don't really pay attention to on a day in and day out basis that could really get affected here.
Yeah, and again, that's something that our Canadian governments have been talking about. That if there are tariffs, you've got to recognize that Canada is a place that is natural resource rich. And that touches into two places too. It's natural resource rich, so we've got commodities ranging from tin, tungsten, tantalum, niobium, antimony is the new one. Obviously, gold is gold, but copper, zinc, all these things exist in Canada. So that's part A. Part B is Canada is the #1 place for international companies to come list. So there is that touch point as well, that if you want to invest into a company from Namibia, as an example, there's a high likelihood that that's going to be listed here in Canada. So there is going to be business that's going to filter through the Canadian markets. Third is what China's doing, and China's putting on restrictions with respect to certain hard metals. And some of those hard metals that they've said, in addition to rare earths, hard metals, they're talking about tantalum, they're talking about tungsten, they're talking about niobium, they're talking about antimony. So companies that have those touch points have seen, again, another big run up as well, because if China blocks, call it the rest of the world or even the US from acquiring these minerals and metals, then they're going to have to go somewhere else, and a place that they might look to is Canada.
Now, I think it was the beginning of this year, we talked a little bit about the battery side of things specifically. I mean, you mentioned a few there, but talk to me about lithium. When is that ever going to actually become a thing? Because it seems like we're just always early on the lithium trade. I mean, you and I have discussed Lithium Americas here, LAC, a number of times, and it just seemed it's struggling to even get going.
Yeah, I know you're a proud investor, so
so
you can send a message to management.
Absolutely,
every time I come on here to talk about anything related to mining, Brendan brings up Lithium, Lithium Americas. It's not a name I know well, but I've had to look it up because you asked me about it.
Always.
You know what? It's in every trade. Like again, I was just mentioning antimony. Like 2 weeks ago, China mentioned they're going to reduce the exposure that people get to antimony, and then any single Canadian name, if you just Google Canadian stocks and antimony, and you looked up any of those stocks, they all went from like 20 cents to 30 cents, or 30 cents to 40 cents, simply because it had a touch point to antimony that they're going to find in a couple of years.
Yeah.
So I think lithium is the one that people look at the most closely, simply because you've got a talking head like Elon Musk, who says that I'm going to need lithium and I'm going to invest into lithium because I'm going to need it for all my electric vehicles. Nobody's, again, like I talk about it, and I'm sure there are a bunch of other people that talk about it. The number of other commodities that you're going to need, whether it's zinc, whether it's tantalum, whether it's tungsten, whether it's tin, copper, all those other commodities are going to be ones that are going to be needed, irrespective of how much lithium. Like lithium is a small component of what you're going to need for these electric vehicles, but all these other minerals are going to be needed for the electrification of the world.
All right. As a whole.
Yeah, so one thing I want to just touch on real quick is I made a note on two companies that if you're interested to see how the U.S. changes or evolves under Trump, there's a company in particular called Northern Dynasty, and it's a really interesting story if you want to do a little bit of geeky homework on it, and I've known the company for a long time. Massive deposit in Alaska, like huge. And everything looked good, and then in the Obama administration, they said that they're not going to be able to do this because there's a river over there where there's salmon, so that got stopped. Trump came in and said, yep, we're going to go again. And then Biden came in and said, well, not them particularly, but the EPA is related to all those, and the BLMs related to all of those, said, nope, yes, nope, yes, nope, yes. And now with Trump back in, Northern Dynasty is kicking back up to its, close to its 52-week highs again because of the fact that this might be allowed to come back in. So
what's the ticker for that?
NDM.
NDM.
So yeah, that one, and so again, you see that chart. It's
looks great.
Ripped on the fact that Trump and the EPA may allow these things.
Yeah, wanted to bring in Neil and Sean, Joe as well. Just as a whole, guys, energy. We talked about it throughout the year, with the idea being Trump's coming back, Trump is back, drill baby drill. Thoughts on energy mining here?
First, the next time you have an NDM, slide in and let us know about it around the election.
Funny, if I knew what I read after the fact,
Double up.
no, helicopter would actually be a helicopter,
Exactly.
not just talking about a helicopter.
Yeah, all good, obviously.
I thought I
No,
heard a helicopter outside over there.
is that what that was?
I don't know, I guess it was Raheem's.
I
You've got
actually,
that Bobby Axelrod vibe going on this morning.
I figured
I gotta cop to this. I've never flown in a helicopter before. I've actually
I've never been
done
in a
it.
helicopter
You've never?
either. No. Have
Brendan?
you guys?
I have actually, yeah.
I
It's
have
very
as
short,
well.
but yeah.
Twice.
See? That's why they're on the desk and we're sitting here.
We're
We
just-
have no idea. We have no idea what we're doing.
Too much time at the trading desk, I guess, missing out on it.
Oh, man.
No, I think, look, I'm going to be buying dips in energy this year, but I was looking over, if you're Canadian, and I know you mentioned Enbridge, and if basically,
Super eager.
I want to say every single Canadian probably, if you don't own this in your RSP, you do, because whatever fund you have, I promise you has this. If you got a mutual fund, like whatever, you get a dividend, it's in here somewhere. And I kind of look at that compared to, like, I've got some XLE and I've got some CVX. I still think some drill baby drill is going to be part of the game. But I look over at Enbridge and I'm like, outside of essentially reinvesting the dividends into the company, I don't think I've been doing a good enough job of maybe adding to this position. Now, don't get me wrong. I do like where the value that you're getting in some of the U.S. oil names, like Chevron, and there's a good level that it's been bouncing off of. So from technical standpoint, like 140 looks really good. I think XOM's giving you some good levels.
Good.
You just have to be patient with them because they've been pretty dead.
Yeah.
All the excitement that I think a lot of people have been expecting since the election, like that, yeah, all of these oil names are going to go. It's just taken some time here. I know Buffett's been buying some Oxy. That gives you a little bit more exposure across the board and not just to oil. But I think you have to be very, very patient because I've been disappointed in the fact that I've chose twice to buy Chevron at 140 when I look at that chart of Enbridge, which I own much more Enbridge in my personal account than I do in my retirement account than I do CVX. And it's like, why? Look how great it's been. But yeah, I still like the play of CVX, maybe not as much as I used to. Some of the things with exposure to nat gas have just been a heck of a lot better. And you should be buying the stronger stocks. As Sharif, you don't look that impressed with the Chevron chart either. He's just watching the TV there.
I want to bring up, and let me know what you think about these kind of plays here, Raheem, because this is the XME. This is an ETF. So this is the all metals ETF here. Just looking at it, it's right back into sort of flat on the year. I mean, this is January of 24. You're right back in here. You've had quite a big move down. You've given some great plays on individual stocks. There's another one that you've talked about. Maybe you're a little bit more adverse in this as well. But Freeport-McMoRan, I know we've talked about this on our show. With China, maybe we talked about the China story. We could have a couple ideas for the trades for this coming year. But Raheem, what do you think about copper maybe making a little bit of a rebound here if the Chinese economy and some of the housing fixes come into play there? We know that they're trying to boost up the economy with some fiscal stimulus. So what do you think about FCX and maybe the copper space, and then or investing maybe in that XME, a whole metals mining ETF?
Yeah, so being an equities guy and being a banker in the equities world, I'm not necessarily aligned to the ETF simply because I believe the single names have more torque, more delta. So if you're passive and you don't really want to watch the market and you kind of just want to be involved in that space, then yeah, ETFs are great. And whether it's cannabis, whether it's copper, whether it's energy, that's fine. I don't really have an opinion on ETFs. But if you want to look at single commodities and how they affect single equities, I'm here to talk about that all day. So copper, I'm very bullish on copper. I think every year that I've been on here, I've always said that copper is going to be a commodity that we're going to need across the world. Again, whether you believe in electrification, whether you believe in electric vehicles, whether you believe in just the housing starts that are going to be needed, copper is needed everywhere, and I believe copper is just going to continue to go. Copper's up 5% in the last, I think, 4 or 5 days. So copper continues to look good, in my opinion, from where it was. And the thing that's the big missing piece I think everyone's still talking about, and if you look at even like a Barrick, if you want to go look up go as large as Barrick has said that they're not going to be a gold company in the next couple of years. If I said Barrick to anybody, they'd say, yeah, Barrick's a gold company. And they've specifically said that in the next couple of years, they're no longer going to be a gold company because they didn't develop enough resources on the gold side, and they did develop some of their copper assets, and the copper assets are going to be the ones that are going to need the most amount of work, most amount of time, most amount of growth, because there's going to be so much copper that's going to be needed. So a lot of these companies are going to eventually become copper companies. And the second key piece, and where you're going to get the biggest, I think, torque and delta, is going to be on some of these small and mid-cap names, because they're the ones that have built a little bit of work around some of these projects. And then whether it's the Freeports or whether it's the Barricks, they're going to come around and say, we need backfill now. And we didn't focus on backfill. We focused on production. We focused on revenue, because copper's at over 4 and gold's over 2,300. Or wherever you want to look at, everyone focused on, the large caps focused on production. And what they just do is just go pick up and buy the smaller guys that have put a little bit of work into it, getting it to a point, and now they need a balance sheet to build. So you should look at those names that have good sized resources in a country where you believe there isn't too much jurisdictional risk. Like if you look at one country versus another, look at what the geopolitical situation is in those countries. And also, like I've talked about a thousand times, is closeology. Like, who are their neighbors? Do they have neighbors like a Barrick? Is a Barrick 5 kilometers away? Is a Rio Tinto 2 kilometers? 200 kilometers away, 500 kilometers. Like, are they in the same country? Are they in the same jurisdiction? So if you've got those large cap companies in those countries with proximity, then that might be a play that you might want to look at to say, hey, Rio Tinto is going to need to acquire something, because they're missing that next piece to get that production number continuous. So they're going to go look and acquire that small cap guy over there. So that's where I believe those opportunities are on the delta, to get that big delta.
All right, let's keep the ball rolling here. AI and crypto, the theme of 2024 right across the board. I like your note. We're way behind here in Canada. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
But there are a few interesting names to have a look at. And as we were saying, half an hour ago or so, I mean, I just brought up this chart for anyone who hasn't seen this in a while. That's Celestica on a daily chart, which is just mind-boggling going into 2025. And then the other one is BlackBerry, as we were saying. It's 2001 all over again, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting to see that these names are coming back. And to be honest, we did mention Celestica.
I mean, Neil was diehard with his BlackBerry.
Yeah,
he was forced to get rid of his BlackBerry.
Oh, I wasn't forced.
No, but it's back now. It's back now. He got the new plan. He got the new BlackBerry plan, I think.
I wish I could say I did, but I will say this. I am 99.9% sure.
I am certainties. Remember, you're the one that told me that.
I am the last person with a BlackBerry that is in my sphere of knowledge. I'm talking about anybody
still alive.
That I grew up with. No, that I know, because the other person was Arun, and he's gotten rid of his as well. And I found out my neighbor across the street, like 1 year before I got rid of mine, he got rid of his as well. But I think can we just acknowledge a very vast difference between Celestica and BlackBerry? I know it's fun for us to talk about them in the same space, but I would hope for anybody that's looking at our market tier, probably one, and you can just find the chart, is a little bit better than the other. Sometimes a company being a going concern and making a shift so they can stay alive, and employees still get to have jobs, and they do a bit of a turnaround, can be a positive thing, but it doesn't necessarily make it a splashy investment. I think there's something here that they can maybe capture. You'll never get back to where you were unless some kind of a meme craze does happen. But I think they're refocusing on what they did best with security, and there's still some advancements that can get made. I think the worst has obviously happened for BlackBerry, but it's not Celestica at all.
I wanted to ask you, Raheem, while we have you here, and again, thank you for coming through on this day for sure from OCI. Big pullback recently in uranium. I mean, we often talk, and I just have the uranium ETF, and I know we'd already discussed it's not going to be an ETF kind of thing, but it's a nice pullback here. We've had some pullbacks in like a new scale, which is SMR. Is there any name here in Canada that you're looking at in the nuclear space? Cameco is obviously a big name as well, but there's been a nice pullback here. What's your thought about uranium maybe in 2025? Or is that maybe too early for this play and we're looking a little bit longer?
No, that's a great question. And again, just going to my earlier comment, when you see M&A start to go in the smaller cap names is kind of a precursor to where activity is, because if the big guy says, hey, I'm going to need some backfill, and they start looking at that. And so there have actually been a number of M&A transactions. I ran into a guy, I didn't even know he ran a uranium company. We were just chatting about business and life and whatever in my building. And he said, yeah, I'm in the middle of a thing. I'm trying to just finish off this deal to acquire a uranium company.
Right.
And it's a uranium company that I actually knew who he was acquiring.
So this is all private equity. These are companies that
this guy's public. He's the CEO of a pubco. I actually told him, I'll get you on Trader TV to talk about it once your deal is done. So he said he would love it because he's watched Sean in the past and Neil in the past, and he wants to be in the presence of Sean and Neil. And be interviewed by Brendan. So he told me all of that actually as we were chatting. But
that's just not true though. Okay.
I'm trying to get it.
We do appreciate that.
Butter us up.
So like I said, uranium trades, if you look at them again on the small cap side, some of those names have ripped 20, 30, 40, 50%, 60% simply on the back of being takeout targets. And when you start to see that, I think again in the small cap world, that is the precursor for everything's happening. If uranium has pulled back a bit, it's simply because it's supply demand. It's where are these reactors going? And for all things American, what is Trump going to do on all of these things? So when those decisions get made, you start to see those transactions happen, and then the commodities start to move on the back of. And like we were just about to get into AI, but if you look at uranium. Is Trump going to do something, or is the American government going to do something? How will that affect uranium? And then you start to see those moves in advance of what might happen. So uranium is a commodity that has run, like you said, it has pulled back. But I do think that it is going to be a commodity that people are going to pay attention to in the new year, just given political tensions that might occur in other parts of the world where you might solicit uranium.
Okay. I want to get to India because we wanted to touch on that real quick. But just as a theme, let's touch on the Canadian banks and how that could be affected by what is to come with all things tariff. But I mean, here's CIBC, huge. Pick one. Like they're all up again this year. Just great years for the financial sector. From a high level, talk about what's to come for banks.
Yeah, so I think when we had talked about banks a little while back, one of the pullbacks on some of these guys was U.S. exposure, and the ones that had U.S. exposure had a bit of pullback. A, B, given the high levels of debt that a lot of households carry, and the uncertainty around interest rates, and the amount that banks were keeping as preservation for writing off bad debts, a lot of banks saw pullback, but. I'm not a large cap guy, but like anybody says, you buy a Canadian bank, you put it away, and you don't look at it for the next 10 years, and the chance of you not making money is almost impossible.
Pretty much zero.
Because we have 5 banks here, or 6 banks, whatever you want to call it. So banks just continue to make money. Where people look for where that delta might be related to U.S. exposure, might be related to investment banking revenues, because that's where the actual delta could be. But in theory, you have 40 million people in Canada divided by 6 banks, and you've got sort of just continuous growth, whether it's on fees, whether it's on FX, whether it's on just on your banking work. And then on top of that, you've got credit cards, and people are always going to carry credit cards and always going to spend on their credit cards. So banks are just going to continue to move. So as a long-term investor, banks are a great place to be for sure. And then you've got a Brookfield on top of that. If you look at Brookfield's chart, it's just these things just go gangbusters because we are a smaller economy. And there are fewer places that you can look for safety around a financial entity.
Yeah, he was just laughing at my reaction to that because all these are stocks that we, as you said, you put them in your account and then you just don't look at it. But it's just unreal. Some of these charts at the end of that year.
To that point, so I have a monthly.
Question from the audience. Yes.
Yeah, question from the audience. Hi,
long-time listener.
Sean in the blue hat.
Sir Alani, I was just wondering about this because you said about Canadian banks, and Brendan made a great point. Set it and forget it. You leave it alone. You grab the dividend. Yep. Dividend yield is all great. Hey, Sharif, man, that looks pretty good over there. This guy's got his little protein mix going on. All right, so here's a chart of TD Bank. What I have marked out right here, Raheem, I got to take this out of my ear because I hear myself. We're right back to levels that we were in on TD Bank specifically. And you talked about the U.S. exposure and all the controversy controversy that they've had. This is 2017. So you are now, if you'd left your money in this name for the past 8 years and woke up today, you would think that you just had a quick little nap, because you would have saw no change in equity, although you would have gotten your 4 to 5% a year, and then you would have thought about inflation, and then you would have said, oh no, what have I done? Because you could have invested anywhere else. But what do you, except for Intel, don't look at Intel or anything like that. But at the same time, is this the right one to buy? I mean, there's so many. We just talked about Royal Bank. I mean, that's going to be the other way. We're at the highs here. So can we get, and what are you hearing from anybody or any of your research? I know it's maybe not exactly in your wheelhouse, but what are we thinking here with TD Bank and some of these Canadian banks that do have an overexposure to the US, especially one that's gone through some controversy lately with TD?
So thanks for calling me out where I said all of them, just set it and forget it. And then Sean has to come in and say,
true.
no,
Oh,
gotcha.
man.
It's true.
I didn't know you were my wife.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah,
I
my
appreciate
bad.
that.
My bad.
So that one time that didn't work out. Got it.
No, but that's why I wanted to bring it up.
just joking.
It is that one stock.
And that's
though.
why,
It is that one
Raheem,
stock.
that's why I went to Royal Bank, CIBC.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
so
no,
many different examples. This is just one that I think is near and dear to many people who watch the stream, because primarily U.S. coverage, right? And so this bank has the biggest. I think if you go to Boston, it's still a TD Bank Garden or whatever, where the Celtics play and whatnot. So any thoughts on this name?
Yeah, no, huge U.S. exposure, which was one thing. And then, a little bit of, call it scandalous stuff that's happened. I've heard some stuff, and I probably won't get into it, but as to why this is occurring, which is unfortunate. But at the end of the day, TD is, again, it's a Canadian bank. It's going to be one of the ones that you're going to want to set and forget. And if they have another scandal in 7 years, Sean will talk about it in the year 2032, and then you'll tell me if I was right or wrong about it. But no, I think, to be honest, I think if I was going to do that, I think TD might be a place that I would look, because it's peeled back so hard versus where RBC is. Can you get that delta on TD versus on RBC? I don't know. I think I might look at that. That's just the risk. It comes out to your risk tolerance. Like, do your homework on what's occurring at TD currently. With all of the issues that they are having from a regulatory point of view. If you think that TD will get past all of those, then in theory, TD should be an amazing buy. And if you're looking for a larger delta, but on a smaller delta, generating returns on top of dividends, all the banks will provide that to you. But I think TD's got the greatest amount of percentage return upside relative to the others, if all things are good from a regulatory point of view.
All right, let's continue on. We talked, I think it was midsummer maybe, a little bit about India, and how at that point anyways, that market was just going gangbusters. There was limit up halts almost on a daily basis. IPOs were just untouchable. We've had a, 3 or 4% crash. And that came on the back of them revising their GDP forecast down 0.5%.
Yeah, we might not get to that 7.5% GDP mark, or that we saw GDP last year go from, it was expected to be 6.5, ended up being 7.5. We can't sustain 7.5, guys. So it's gonna be a pullback down to 7, and then all these things are negative sentiment around that, because it's horrible. You're down 8% on your 7.5 GDP growth. So is it sustainable? No, everything's got to have a down to have an up, and that's just the way life is. And India's extremely frothy. I guess I don't know if that's the best word for it, but probably frothy is the way to look at it. You look at stocks on the BSE, 70 to 80 times. You're looking at the NSE 25, 30 times. Like, is that sustainable? Probably not. It's probably not sustainable. So it's going to have to pull back a little bit. But you're going to see these things just continue to grow. India's just got too much growth for these things to have a fall down.
Right.
But there are those implied trades that if you do see that dip, buy the dip, obviously.
But more of an indication maybe of the amount of money being generated and the amount of money sitting on the sideline looking for a place to be put to work.
And the thing is too, like there's the professional money that's maybe waiting on the side saying, okay, this is going to dip a bit and it's falling. But then you've also got up to 1.2 billion people that are now entering the markets, and it's not 1.2 billion people. Maybe it's still 100 million people that are every year probably coming into the market to start to trade stocks. And when those things start to go, all things come together, there's just that much money that's coming into the market. And so these IPOs are still going out. They're still getting oversubscribed because of the fact that there's so much money still wanting to be, it's FOMO.
And a good place to end. I think we've taken up so much time for Raheem, Sean. Yeah. More questions from the audience, Sean.
He can stay a little longer.
Well, my question would be like, you made it sound a little bit pessimistic for India. If you look at most of the ETFs, like they still are in maybe a head and shoulders, but in a tremendous upward pattern. The other thing I would say, and I want to get
the chart, Fabian.
Yeah, here's like the ETF. I mean, I don't know. It seems like a reasonable pullback.
That's the crash.
This is not a crash.
It's not pessimistic at all. I'm 100% optimistic on, or 99.9% optimistic on India.
Wow, Neil.
Well, no, it's just a matter of
he knocked that
Like,
point
what's
1%
happening?
out of me. I'm 99.9% optimistic on India. I believe huge fundamental growth. But like I said, I'm not pessimistic. It's just like right now when people are seeing that it's not going to be 7.5%, they see it's going to be 7. I still think 7 is a fantastic number.
It is.
So, but then there's going to be that small sell-off. And again, the articles, if you read articles about it, in my research notes that I had, crash was the word that they use, and it's not a crash at all. But you look at that ETF that you just showed, is it down? Is that a horrible chart? Sure, if you take it in that very small sample size of the last 4 days.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's that mentality of, as the market continues to go up and up and up and up and up, when you eventually do get that slight little pullback, everyone hits the panic button immediately.
Yeah, got to run. I can't believe I'm down 7% today. It's horrible, right? And in India, 7% up and down is an actual possible number that could happen to you. Yeah. Versus in Canada, if you swung 7%, you'd be like, holy, what just happened?
I actually just wanted to talk quickly about one other thing. Do they have any rules over there about day trading, like the PDT rule that you know of, Raheem, or anything? Because I think with this growing population and some more income coming into the higher educated, more 20s, 30-year-olds coming out there with disposable income, the stock market is a truth, and that is that it continuously, if you're an investor over time, you're going to earn, 12, 13% over the S&P 500. If we're getting similar gains like that and even outsized gains in India, aren't the kids and the new generation going to just continuously even passive investing into the stock market, helping lift even some of these, higher quality, grade A companies over there? Because I think the ETF looks like it's in a great spot, and especially with the fact that more passive investing to come in India.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we were just saying, that there's going to be so much money that's just going to continue to come into the market. And again, just look at where we all were, say, 20 years ago or 25 years ago. Sorry to date everybody, but, going back a little bit, when money started to come into the market of your friend circle, right? Now, just imagine your friend circle now being 100 million people that are now getting access to the market, whether it's through technology or whether it's just through the fact that they're now getting access to the markets, whatever it is, and it's a combination of both probably. But you've got that much money that's coming into the market, all things have to rise. And that's why, when we've talked about some of the IPOs in India that are 400, 500, 1,000 times oversubscribed, it's ridiculous, right? And then you look at the larger companies where you can kind of set it and forget it, like a Tata Consulting, like TCS, any of these big companies.
Right.
And again, they are international businesses, so they are subject to what might happen in the U.S., right? Like if they have a big presence in the U.S. and the U.S. says, no, we only want U.S. business doing business with U.S. business, then does that affect the TCS, and does that affect them in their Indian stock price? All those things you kind of got to look at and evaluate. But from a pure India business point of view, if you look at an Indian company serving the Indian population with Indian markets, I mean, just the numbers there are just too big to ignore.
From a general standpoint, what are you excited about for 2025?
Coming here every couple of weeks.
Right.
Good answer.
That's right.
Good answer. Nailed it.
And I also hold on, back over here, because real quick. There's someone else that's watching this show right now. We started talking about banks, all the Canadian banks and everything like that. I had the Benzinga Newswire up. Come over here, Brendan. I want to show you this right here. Look what's just happened since we started. Okay, 10:05, right? Here it is. RBC Capital upgrades Bank of Montreal. RBC Capital upgrades Canadian Imperial Bank. Another upgrade there, another upgrade. 3-4 upgrades in the Canadian banking sector. And then here we go on also Capstone Copper with an upgrade right here also from RBC Capital. So we were joking about different CEOs watching the show, and maybe they are not, but we started talking about banks. We gave a little bit of a positive outlook, and then RBC up, and away. So
I
there
said
it is.
copper,
Man.
I said banks, and they all upgraded.
Exactly. See what
What I'm taking away from
See,
it.
Raheem, see.
Capstone is making a move right now, actually.
So there you go,
Welcome,
Raheem.
Capstone.
That's why the helicopter's on the roof right now.
Look at that. Look at that. Raheem comes over here.
No, this is legitimately the opening.
I'm
print.
starting to hear like those whooshings of the
literally just took the
of
open.
the helicopter.
You couldn't like this is and it holds VWAP. Like that's just an easy trend trade. It's on 1 million shares too. Capstone.
And that's why, just quickly, that copper ETF, and then we're going to go. I know we have Michael Noss waiting in the wings, and we do appreciate that. I want to show you something technically to everybody that's really interesting. I know Neil looked at the weekly charts as well. This is Dr. Copper right here, CopX, and maybe this is more on the line of Michael Noss sitting there. But look at this weekly. This is the 200 period, Raheem and everybody else. 200 period moving average on the weekly. Look at that. Bounce, 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 bounce. So anyways, looking bullish here on copper. Thanks for joining us today, Raheem.
Thanks, Raheem.
Yeah, always good to see you. Appreciate you hanging out for an extended version of the Raheem Alani show today.
Let's do it more often.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun as usual, man.
Happy to, guys. Good luck.
Oh, and
good luck to all your teams this weekend.
Raheem, you know that big ass
need it.
bottle of Prosecco? That was well taken.
No.
Thank you so much for that. The wife appreciated it, and then I looked over and I was like, "Where did it all go?" You know,
New Year's. That's
Yeah, she likes
That was our
she
jam.
likes the bubbly, so we appreciate that. Thank you, Raheem Alani. Great friend of the show and a friend of ours for almost a decade, I'd say.
longer, I think.
Longer.
Maybe.
Thanks.
Oh yeah.
All right, you guys take it over. We'll get Raheem out of here and Sharif back in, and we'll talk to Mr. Noss, who's waiting in the wings, as you guys mentioned.
Yes, sir. And look, the Canadian markets are up. So when
We have Joe and Adira just sitting right over here.
I see him in there. He's in there in the chat.
Yeah.
I gotta make sure we answer the questions in the chat. So I know we got Michael Noss waiting, guys.
And we got we did have
Once again, I jumped the gun. They're not ready yet.
They're not ready yet? Okay. Well, there's one thing that I wanted to touch on because we were talking about the energy sector, and one thing that I found really curious, just to kind of emphasize what Donald was saying, is drill, baby, drill. But here, north of the border as well, too, in Canada, we know that we have a little political unrest, right? So our potential future prime minister, I think, is going by the same motto as well, too. He wants to unlock the power of those natural resources that Canada holds. So that's exactly what I was doing earlier in the week after I watched what he had to say was, why do I get a fail on that one?
Who hit the fail?
Who hit the fail? That's a pass, if anything. I'm forward-looking here. Oh, okay, anyways. But, guys, I'm forward-looking here because we do know, as I just mentioned, that motto, drill, baby, drill. I think that's going to be the same case over here north of the border. So that's why I was looking at Enbridge, because I want to know who is going to be the primary beneficiary of this LNG shipment and distribution of our natural resources. So that's why I was looking at Enbridge as well, too. So I found that really curious because I do think that it's going to be the same case here in Canada. So yeah, that was one interesting fact that I liked and I wanted to touch on quickly. And then also just to go back a couple more steps, with the Nick W, he was talking about SOXL. Sorry to go back a little bit farther, but SOXL is not a long-term investment, Nick W. It is a leveraged trading vehicle, right? It is a leveraged derivative. So they have decay as well, too. So playing those types of vehicles are more for an intraday basis, okay? So that's one thing that you need to understand. Those are not long-term investments. What's Kathy want?
Make it up for SMH.
Kathy,
Yeah,
you on the phone with her?
Yeah, we'll talk about Palantir soon.
We'll talk about, okay.
Yeah,
Oh, I
that's
have some
okay.
stuff on Palantir.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I agree. Yeah, Joe is. Okay, we'll talk. All right.
All right.
No, I just want to say, like, that's why I wanted to bring Joe in right there. You know, I was gonna say, like, this guy's over here just dropping these bombs, these little nuggets of truth.
Exactly.
I don't know how many retruths we're gonna get on that one, but I mean, I think that was.
we need the retruths, man.
I'm hitting that retruth key all
hit
day
the
on this.
Guys, make sure you like and retruth in the chat there. So, no, but in all seriousness, I mean that SOXL, not a long-term investment.
Right. So do you want to explain why? And that's because there's a decay on options there because you have
exactly,
and
they're
leverage.
rebalanced as well too on a daily basis. So keep that in mind. So they have that negative impact on them. So again, just not something that you want to play for the long term. You want to go with more of SMH, right? That is the actual ETF, and utilize SOXL as an intraday or even like a shorter duration. Even in the swing plays, I think is pushing it a little bit too much. but it is more of an intraday vehicle because you have that leverage aspect to that trading vehicle, all right? So that is what I wanted to touch on with SOX L and kind of just my outlook and forward look here in the Canadian economy.
All right.
Going to push those natural resources, and that's it.
So I noticed now that my wife is in the chat. So shout out to Marissa. And this is
up,
for Raheem.
Marissa?
So, you know, as Raheem's leaving, my wife goes, more Raheem, like in bold and capitalize, more Raheem, less of her husband, of course. And then, yes, thank you, Raheem. And then she says down here as well that Prosecco, the only time size matters.
Oh.
Wow.
Not a great thing to hear. Not a great thing to hear from your wife. Not a great thing to hear from.
That's cold, Marissa. That's cold.
But I did want to obviously shout out Raheem for that perspective.
That's it.
I did look over and it was pretty much empty.
Of course.
And Marissa was enjoying it.
Marissa's got jokes, man. Though that's,
A little, yeah, very.
No,
very,
that's trust me. Like she's got jokes.
Well, apparently she's got
she
a lot
likes
of
to
jokes.
just
There's a lot of options
Cold
questions
blood.
in the chat too, so guys, keep just throwing them in there, and maybe we'll do the best that we can.
Yeah, she is cold, Ozan. She's cold.
cold.
Yeah, that was very cold.
With a cold shoulder.
We did get a super chat that I think we got a couple of super chats we got to get through for a quick little second
Lock the
here.
account.
We're locking the account. What's the credit card?
So first one, actually no, we had 3 super chats. Actually, check that. I thought we had 2 since the Sox. And of course, Nick W. I mean, if you are determined to look at Sox, maybe you meant Sox X. But that's why we were talking about SMH. I think that's the better long term if you're looking for semis. We had Rohit in the chat. Thank you for the super chat, Rohit. Seeking structured trading course, even paid to deepen your knowledge. You've been learning price action independently, but want systematic approach. One, I would say, obviously, tune in here and you'll be doing fine. And second, maybe we have to start considering what we can do, and maybe we should look into the near term and see what we can figure out for you guys. Because we get this a lot, and we don't really sell anything. It's not been our MO. Our MO is to be free and give you guys knowledge every single day. But maybe we have to look into something that we can provide for you. Johnny Capo. Thank you very much for the super chat here. Been day trading for 4 years and thinking about the mark-to-market election with the IRS, removing wash sales and claiming all losses sounds good. Thoughts? I cannot. And sometimes the simple answer is we trade on a prop floor and we're Canadian. So my knowledge, and maybe somebody else has better knowledge on the panel with me, I don't know too much about any possible regulatory changes that could be coming with regards to wash sales. So I just simply don't know. But I think it's worth it.
Wash sales?
Whether they'd actually look at removing some of the current.
I don't think that's anything to do with administration, is it?
Well, if you were to have a more friendly,
SEC.
yeah, I mean it's going to be the SEC. Like maybe you're going to have more pressure for there to be a more open-minded approach to both trading and fintech. I don't know. My answer is I don't know for that one. So
are you talking about? Is he also mentioned the PDT rule?
He didn't mention PDT. He simply looked. No, wash sales there is different for us. Like wash sales is certainly it's like the amount
taking the same amount of stock a couple times in a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So like turning the stock over.
Are they going to loosen some of those rules? I don't know.
Right.
I think it's worth a consideration, and maybe they do. And then Paul asked, what are your thoughts on nuclear energy stocks? And I was talking about this earlier. I don't think we should be ignoring things like GE Vernova, Vistra, and Constellation. It's not just about the SMRs of the world. I think one thing I want to do in my personal account is I already own GE Verona because of the spinoff. But in addition to owning SMR, I want to also be dollar cost averaging into one of the more stable names in the nuclear space. And I haven't decided whether that's going to be Constellation or it's either going to be CEG or GE Verona. As I said, I own GE Verona shares simply because I got them in the spinoff from GE. But one of those two, I'm going to figure out which one I like better. And then in addition to adding into SMH this year, SMR, I should say, SMR, I'll pick one of those for more stable nuclear play.
All right, we've had Michael waiting in the wings for quite a while. So let's go back over to the desk. Say hello once again to our friends, Sharif and Brendan.
Yeah, they're coming fast and furious today. We appreciate Michael Noss joining on a day where we don't have to be looking at the market, Michael Noss, but we're such diehards. Of course we like to anyway. So yeah, appreciate you waiting and patiently hanging out. Just from a high level standpoint, just to start off, let's touch on 2024. First off, give me your thoughts on, from a general perspective, what did you take away from 2024 and what are you looking for into 2025?
Well, yeah. So I think the 2024 theme was just mega caps, right? Mega caps, AI, everything that moved was related to that, down to utilities. I think this was the first time ever that the leading S&P 500 stock was a utility. It was what, VRT, I think it was. Verti Holdings, and it's just a energy company that supplies to AI. So, first time ever that we saw utility stock doing this well, and I think more of this kind of strangeness could continue. What we need to see, and I was watching as I was working in the green room there, and 100% agree. We need to see expansion into small caps. We need to see expansion into other names because themes can carry us for some time, but they can't carry us forever. So what I'm looking for is some sort of expansion outside of that AI theme, some sort of movement away from it. But it's really was one of those years, if you take a look at the S&P 500 and we just zoom out a bit, how amazing this chart looks versus the IWM, which, right, if we zoom out for the same period of time, really couldn't get going, showing us that it's very much a have not type of market where the big guys did fantastic. If you had anything downstream to do with AI, that was great as well. If you were literally anyone else, you had a rough year last year.
From a general standpoint, we've touched on this a little bit in the past week or so with the idea that it's essentially 5 or 6 stocks that are doing the heavy lifting and continuing to do the heavy lifting here to a point where the percentage that those 5 or 6 stocks are making up of the general S&P 500 has gotten to historic levels going back to, I think it was 2008, the financial crisis was the last time that we saw similar weightings in the S&P. How do we approach that going into 2025 from the big cap standpoint? So many people, want to have these stocks, want to hold them, want to trade them. But, that's definitely a cautionary note.
Yeah, I think the question is, how does the rebalancing happening? And it can happen in 2 ways, right? And one is really good for us and one isn't, right? The bad way is that people sell, there's these big cap stocks, the Mag 7, and they don't do anything, right? They just sell the stock, they buy bonds, they buy gold, they buy something unusual like that. The good way is that we see some profit taking happen in those big cap stocks, and they use them to take other bets on other sectors and other industries that could potentially could lead in the future. So that has to do, I think, more or less than sentiment, right? If I'm a giant hedge fund manager and I'm selling some of these names that might be a bit overdone, the big names, if I think the AI trade has maybe reached a bit of a pinnacle, I'm always looking to outperform the index. That's what I was going to do. And last year, if you weren't outperforming the index, if you're a giant hedge fund manager that don't actively trade, unless you held a lot of these big names. So I think a lot of it has to do with just what do they think is going to happen next? If they think the AI trade is going to fizzle out and that will be the end of the market, then you will see this kind of selling and buying of defensive assets. If they think that this is just going to continue, that the party's still going on, you'll see a little bit of maybe a selling of these AI type names, but then you want to see IWM or something catch up. So one chart I just have here is just the S&P 500 versus IWM. And if we zoom out, basically, if this line is going up, then we know that the S&P 500 is really outperforming small caps. And if this line is going down, we know that small caps are doing well as well. And I think what we need to see is a little bit of what happened here in 2020 and 2021, where you saw a lot of these small caps really catching up. But ever since February 2021, it's kind of been large cap or nothing. So the question is, when they make money in the mega caps, what do they do with it? So that's why ratio charts like this, I think, can really help out.
Michael, okay, so we always take like the beginning of the year to kind of use it as a soft reset. Everything that's done well in 2024, some people ring the profit bell towards the end of the year. Is there anything not breaking out? Was there anything on the precipice of, looking good technically that you might have your eye on?
Yeah, so I got a couple charts. The first one here, we just look at the SPY, because we were talking about the first 5-day rule a lot on here. I was coming in and talking about sentiment. And this black line on the S&P 500, this was the close of December 31st. And we got our first 5 days as the close of yesterday. So barely, but yes, we closed positives on the first 5 days. And again, for those who missed that, there's an 83 or so % strike rate. If you look at the Stock Traders Almanac, which again, I would highly recommend checking out, but basically just says if the first 5 days of January are positive, that means that there wasn't a lot of tax selling that came in super aggressively. 83% chance we're higher into the end of the year, which is fantastic. So that was one thing I noticed right away. But another thing that I brought for you guys, if I just make this big, is this is a heat map of every ETF that I personally watch from a year-to-date basis. So it's showing what are the sectors that are up the most year to date and what are down the most, again, in these first 5 days. So this is something that I'm really watching day to day with some surprising results. So PSIL actually being the leader. These are these psychedelic names, right? So think MindMed and Cybin, I think CYBN. So this sector looks like it's getting interesting. I did a little bit of reading on them, which I know will shock you guys looking outside the charts. It looks like some of these are entering phase 3 trials. So there may be some bets coming in that these phase 3 trials will do well this year. I think they come out mid or the end of next year. So I'm looking at this chart to say, hey, is this institutional money coming in, starting to take the bet? Another one that shocked me actually is solar, up 5% so far this year, doing better than the overall market as well. So this is still an incredibly ugly chart on solar. But if you just look at these, again, we're only 5 days into the year. If you look at these kind of 5 days right here, actually had a really good 5 days. So kind of shocking that, that we've gotten this far. But yeah, it's one of those things where we need to kind of pay attention to the overall sectors just to see, hey, is there something that's popping up here?
I gotta ask you something, Mike, because I saw you put in a ticker there. You were comparing the SPY and the Russell 2000, the ETFs. You put SPY forward and then /IWM. Can you explain a little bit about how to interpret this chart? Because it's the first time I've seen it done.
Yeah, well, this is really CMT nerd stuff right here, but relative ratio charts, right? Okay. So if you think about it, every chart you look at is denoted in something, has to be, right? Usually it's US dollars. You bring up a chart of Apple, it's basically Apple over US dollars. What we like to do a lot as kind of CMTs is something called intermarket analysis, right? What is one sector doing versus another? And there's some really good charts that you can do for this. So yeah, in TradingView or in TrendSpider, a lot of these places, you can do math. So if I just bring up the chart here, if I do Apple and then divide it by Google, this will show me a chart of Apple denoted in Google. So essentially, if the line is going up, Apple's outperforming Google. If the line's going down, Apple's underperforming Google. Quite often, you're not going to draw your support resistance or anything on these charts, but it will just show you relative strength of one instrument versus another. So the SPY divided by IWM will show mega cap versus small cap. And generally speaking, large cap will outperform small cap. But in the areas that it doesn't, it can show us things, right? As this line is selling off, I might want to be looking more in the small cap space versus the large cap. So then we get really fancy. One of my favorite charts is actually this one right here, which is RSPD versus RSPS. So it's an equal weight consumer discretionary versus consumer staples. And the reason I do equal weight is because the cap weighted is mostly Tesla and Amazon, I think. But these charts will basically show me a risk on versus risk off idea. If this line is going up, it means consumer discretionary is outperforming. Discretionary just being people buying stuff that they don't need. If it's going down, then consumer staples is outperforming, which is more of a flight to safety thing. People are buying more toilet paper and less iPhones. So right now you can see from the beginning of 2022, which was pretty much the end of the bear market, this chart's kind of been straight up. So this is a good indicator. These relative charts kind of tell you where money is flowing into and out of, which is kind of the entire point.
So if we dig in a little deeper, then let's get to the good stuff. From an individual name or maybe a group of stocks that look good from a technical standpoint, what has your eye, or what's got you excited, I guess, going into the 2025?
So, full disclosure, I already own some of this MindMed. I think I've talked about it a few times here, but if we go back to this chart, the fact that psychedelics are up 16% this year, it's got to be election related in some way. Maybe someone coming into the administration has said something positive about it, whatever it is. If I zoom out here on this chart, this is a very kind of typical cup and handle style play. This name has gotten absolutely beaten down from $85. It was already down to $2 at one point. So just completely destroyed, put in a nice rounded bottom, and then a cup and handle style play. So I'm going to take a look at that. And like I mentioned, solar is very surprising to me that it's actually number 3 here on this list. So I want to focus on that as well when it comes to trying to find individual names. FSLR is the only one that looks even remotely okay, and you can kind of see that cup and handle style look there happen as well. But it's just been such a beaten down industry, and it's one of those things that you don't expect based off rhetoric to be something that would go well. But what I want to note through a lot of people is quite often the market does the opposite. I remember with Joe Biden in, a lot of people expected the price of coal to go to zero, and it had an amazing time. So MSOS under Biden, which I think was looking to legalize marijuana, that had an incredibly bad time as well. So I think it's time to kind of avoid some of the narrative and then look at these charts and see which of these sectors look like they could be bottoming. Again, solar was very interesting to me. Again, this TAN ETF has just been absolutely destroyed for years and years and years. So if we're going to get some sort of a short-term bottom, we get a little bounce on it. That's interesting. Last but not least, natural gas. Again, talking my book here on UNG as well. I own some of this. But we had this idea of, I don't have it drawn in here now, but we had the 200-day moving average that was acting as resistance for like 2 years. We finally broke that. If we are going to get some sort of a turn in natural gas, I think it's going to happen around this $15 area. So for a longer term play, I want to keep an eye on this one as well.
I mean, we were just touching on it a little bit there with Raheem on the energy side of things specifically, and natural gas on an individual basis. One of the things I love about Michael Noss is he doesn't care about the narrative, he doesn't care about the story, he doesn't care about anything like that. It's just, what is the chart saying overall? Is there one that maybe looks the opposite direction, that looks overtly weak, that might surprise you?
Good question.
TXT, some of these semi names are potentially, not text, that's a different one that I was thinking of, but that actually does look bad. But NVIDIA and a lot of these names, I'm actually getting slightly worried about, and this might bum out a lot of people, but we got to this black line in NVIDIA was all-time highs. And we were there, and Jensen was on stage at CES, and everybody was all hyped up for it. And then we hit that line right to the tick, all-time highs, and then just fell off like 5-6% and didn't really get much of a bounce yesterday, right? So we had this candle being red, so NVIDIA was down on the day, where the S&P 500 was actually able to close just a little bit, but a little bit green. So not only seeing a rejection from a pretty important level there, but also seeing some relative weakness in semis. So do I think, NVIDIA is going to crash down to zero or something? There's certainly nothing like that, but it may be one of those times where semiconductors enters that phase where most traders who are super pumped about it end up giving a bunch of money back. And that's just consolidation, where people are not super excited in either direction for semis anymore. Maybe the money has already been kind of made, everything is priced in when it comes to this AI trade for these particular names. This enters kind of a range, which again can be profitable if you're trading it actively. You can do some crazy option stuff with selling straddles and strangles and all of that. But I think the most frustrating place this year will probably be the semi space, just because it was the most watched last year. Put a tinfoil hat on my head, but maybe it's just the market doing that thing where it causes the most amount of pain to the most amount of people. And I think for semis, that would just be this massive, massive range for pretty much the entire year.
All right, so I've been noticing, I saw a couple of new indicators on your charts there, Michael. I saw the stochastics on some of your charts. Now we know towards the end of last year, you started using the moving average clouds. Any new indicator possibly on your horizon that you're trying to incorporate into your analysis for 2025?
Yeah, I've been playing a lot with stochastics and specifically a 10 period, and I can find the study if there's any nerds like me that want to read it. But what I do in my spare time is I actually read studies that are published based off of different CMTs. There's something that we do every year called the Charles Dow Award, where you write a paper and you submit it to the CMT, and if it passes, you get some accolades. I think they fly you out somewhere and give you a pat on the back.
Cool.
But it ends up being this reservoir of CMTs that are sharing data and statistics. And this one study, and this is why I started looking at this stochastic, was looking at Williams percent R, which is a Larry Williams indicator, combined with stochastics and using that as a mean reversion system on the S&P 500. And it smoked the overall market, essentially just buying the overall market when it was oversold and then selling it back out when it was overbought. It's a very interesting paper. So I've started to pay attention to that as well. And also because we're in a bull market. So I think it's very important if someone puts an indicator on their screen, they know exactly what it's trying to tell them and what it is that it's looking for. So the stochastics, RSI, Williams R, all of these are overbought, oversold indicators. The idea being that in bull markets, these are going to do fantastic. In ranging markets, they're probably going to do pretty well. But in bear markets, you're going to get absolutely destroyed. So as long as we're in a bull market, I'm experimenting a lot more with dip buying as opposed to kind of breakouts. Part of it is I think we could be entering kind of range or congestion for the better part of next year. And the idea is that if you are really bullish a stock and that stock is incredibly strong, having a pullback and getting both the stochastics, which is down here, and the Williams percent R oversold, based off this study in the S&P 500 ends up being a really good time to generally enter. So using the both together can do that as well. So it's interesting. If we're going to remain in a bullish or choppy market, I'm going to pay more attention to this. I've been doing a lot over at my website on backtesting. I've got backtest now going to 1980. While I was waiting in the waiting room, I'm doing some breadth analysis now going back to 1950. So the more tests that I do, the more of these indicators become interesting to me. And this is one that's testing very, very well for, again, buying dips in a bull market. So it completely falls apart in a bear market, so it's in a bull market. And that's where a bit of trader discretion can come in to make sure that you're focusing on the right side of what's going on there.
We'll keep an eye on it. I mean, lots of great data to look forward to throughout the year. Michael Noss, great contributor for us all the time. We appreciate you taking time on a day when, as I said, we don't even have to be looking at the market, but we like it so much. So thanks so much, Michael Noss, for hanging out.
Awesome. Talk to you guys soon.
Take a look here now at some more graphics here from Trader TV Research. You can check these out here at TTV Research on X. We're going to start here with these sector performances, 2 graphics related to sector performance in the year 2024. So, of course, the top performer here is communications. This is consumer discretionary actually did really well, despite the fact that one of the worst performers here on the year was in this sector. We'll look at that in a minute. Financials had a great year as well. Technology, despite the fact that the best performer of the year was in the sector, actually not one of the winners here, up on the year, but not as much as you might expect. Utilities also had a great year. Technology and utilities both benefited from having the top 2 performers in the S&P 500, both of which were added to the SPY this year. Worst performer here is going to be materials. They're actually the only sector down on the year. So pretty impressively, of these 11 S&P 500 sectors, only 1 was actually red on the year. This also might have to do with the fact, though, that the weighting of the S&P 500 is pretty skewed. So a lot of these Mag 7 names, most of which are in technology, are weighted much heavily than a lot of these other performers. Now we're going to look here at the top, best, and worst performers here in the S&P 500. I guess I can't do that on my screen. But yeah, I'll get that set up for you guys in a moment. Sorry, I didn't realize I couldn't flip on.
One of the things to keep in mind for that XLC, which, as you see, is like the top performer, 38% of XLC is simply Meta and Alphabet. You have to add up Google and Goog, which, whatever. It's one of those, like, it's got the both because obviously it has to, but 38% is going to be in those. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where, which one do I like better? Do I want to dip buy Alphabet? Do I don't want to dip buy Meta? Do you want some other exposure? I'd have to look what else is in there. Netflix, Take-Two, Disney's in there a little bit. So it gives you a lot of exposure to two of the biggies, and then maybe a little bit of cross exposure. So if you lean to, I absolutely love Meta and Alphabet, then I think that XLC makes a lot of sense. But it's always good to know, like, well, why would it outperform so much? Same thing. It just holds a couple of the big Mag 7 names for you.
Yeah, I actually forgot. Right now, you do have some of these names that are also being able to trade over in Canada right now as well. There's nothing actually happening right now. I just want to bring up the idea that if you are, there's no volume on these names, but this is Google, for example, like in Canada right now. So you can see it's only done 13,000 shares, but there still is a market. So if anything did come through on any of these major names, I mean, all of them trade with the Canadian hedged. This is CIBC products, CDRs. So very, very similar to what you see there on Alibaba or something like that. And we talk about being able to take advantage of Moon, ATS, and Blue Ocean and things like that. It's just nothing's happening. But like NVIDIA right now, I guess just people may be getting in and out of some shares, but up a little bit here today. We talked about some other Canadian names. I see a little bit of trading, 1041, 48. Like these are all within the last 10 minutes. So a couple of shares going through there, maybe a couple thousand shares going through on NVIDIA. So just a couple things to trade. And then we were looking at a couple other names, and just for everybody here in Canada to see what's going on, you can see a nice little rebound. And it's funny because we could have traded HUD 8 today, and we just got sidetracked with what we were doing on the show. But this is another name that's very heavily, we have Hive as well there. We talked about the Hive blockchain, but this is a nice move up for HUD 8 as well, up $3. Like they opened the day down there to $31.74, make the move up, $2 to $33.74 right now. So a nice $2 move to the upside there on HUD 8. As we get that rebound in Bitcoin, I know we're going to go back over to the desk to the screen, I think with Adara in a couple minutes, but there's that hold on Bitcoin that we started the show with down there at 92, 91,000. So we said that there was a possible dip by opportunity coming into play there. We had zoomed a little bit lower here and looked at 87, 88,000. But Bitcoin right now looks to be pretty decent for a rebound as it's holding 94 and change. I still have my earpiece in, so you tell me what you guys want to wind up doing here. Okay, let's go over to the screen then with Adara.
Apologize for the little break there. Now we're going to take a look here at the best and worst stocks per sector in the year 2024. And interestingly enough here, technology somehow had both the best and the worst stock. The best here in Palantir, up 340% on the year. And then the worst in Intel, which is down about 60% on the year. So that could be why technology was not the outperformer we necessarily thought it would be. Utilities is great here as well with Vistra. We know these two perform pretty similarly. These sectors in the year, in Vistra and Palantir, the top 1 and 2 stocks respectively on the S&P 500 in terms of gainers for the year. Vistra and Palantir also being both added to the index this year as well. Take a look here. Interestingly enough, I think communications, we talked about this being the top sector on the year. It wasn't the Meg 7s that brought it up though. Netflix, the top performer in this sector, up about 83%. We know this one made multiple new all-time highs in 2024, though it's found a little bit of a double top on the daily chart. Paramount, the worst performer in this sector. Now, if we go to XLY here, we have top performer RCL. We know some of these cruise lines are really strong in the latter half of the year. Royal Caribbean at the top, Nike at the bottom, down about 30%, and they're also down year to date in 2025 as well. Walmart, the best performer here, not super surprisingly, on the XLP. WBA, the worst performer. KKR winning financials. They're another name that joined the S&P 500 this year, whereas Franklin Resources, BEN, actually at the bottom. Intuitive Surgical at the top here for health. Moderna, the loser for health, so not super surprising. We talked about UAL here being the winner for XLI. It's worth noting, GEV was technically the top sector here, but I elected not to put it on this graphic because of the fact that it was actually basically spun off this year. So in terms of actual things that could have a year-to-date performance, from January 1st to December 31st, I wanted to put UAL on here. They were the other top performer. Boeing, the worst performer of the year in this sector. We also had International Paper here in XLB, Builders, and CE, Celanese. They were one of the worst performers this year, and they're the worst in the building sector. Some of these other ones here, we have XLRE as well and XLE, but I think one thing that's really interesting to note is that a lot of these top performers were names that were actually added to the index this year, where a lot of the worst performers were some of these old staples like Nike, like Moderna, like Intel. So it might be a little bit of a change in the tides here in this market in terms of 2024 performances. What say you?
I think we always lean into the more simple things. And I look for, like we were actually just talking, well, look, I like G Verona, so it's going to be hard for me to ignore it there. And it makes a lot of sense when looking at a chart like that. Okay, obviously, if you didn't have it in the spinoff for most of the year, you had to own G, and then you get G Verona. But I like continuation themes, and if nuclear is going to be a thing, then I want to have a safety name in there. So I hate to keep coming back to GE Verona, but that is a name that I'm definitely going to be a fan of and buying some dips. There was a question in the chat. We were asked. It was a question grouped to all of us. What do you think about Shopify this year? I'm a little bit concerned about this stock. It trades 74 times its forward P, 100 times currently. If the market does a dip, I think there's going to be an opportunity to gobble it back up at a pretty significant, like this 110 to 125 area. I think obviously you want to look for what happens in the next quarter. If they have really strong growth the next quarter, you could change where that dip buy would come in for me on Shopify. But certainly in this environment this year, expecting increased volatility, and if the market is going to do any kind of, the NASDAQ say a 5-10% pullback, I'd expect Shopify is going to do much more than that. And so it wouldn't be unreasonable that it pulls back at 20%, which I think would be a good opportunity to get in.
I don't know why the chart only goes back to 2028 here, but I'm going to go with Baxter, my 22-year-old here, that said Intel's recent release of some of the chips there he feels are somewhat reasonable to start to do something. So this level, we don't get too many names. We showed you TD Bank there. That's back to 2017 levels. This name right here, Intel, I should probably pull up, here's a weekly on Intel on eSignal, so we'll get a little bit of a better dive into this one. Let's go to a month and have even a broader look because we want to get back as far as you can go. But there's some key levels here, man. We talked about this with Brian Shannon. Obviously, just looking at a chart, Intel being the worst of that whole thing there, like we say Nike was bad, down 30%. Intel down 60% on the year when we're supposed to be in this like AI computer crazed world. I wonder if there's some value here or some value in a name like an AMD. AMD's chart's going to look much different, obviously, because if you invested in this name in 2008, you're long at $8. So talk about burning money in Intel. I mean, at some point, maybe it starts to go. But AMD is also getting interested. The last time we dipped down back in 2021, we all know what happened, down from 162 all the way down into $65, which hit the 50-period moving average. You're getting close to that right now. Big time money destruction here in this advanced money destroyer. AMD getting ready for another long opportunity. I think this 110, 115 area looks pretty good for me in this one. So although I've sort of said that I'm going to maybe get out of the stock picking game, we had some great wins this year with, you just saw the number one stock on there, Palantir. I mean, this hat is probably 3 or 4 years old right here. So we've been sporting this since IPO or since direct listed days. So it's nice to get that kind of a move. I just think that, hey, I'm not switching out of Palantir. I'm putting new money to work. And I think one of the ideas that I like for this year is going to be Intel. So let's see how it works around this $20 mark. But I think you're a story or two away. I mean, especially if President Trump, who's going to come in and make America great again. I mean, Intel is very, very strong American company with money being thrown at them from Joe Biden for the foundries. And then again, if there are any tariff restrictions, Intel might be on the better side of that coin. So we'll wait to see what happens in the new year for Intel. I'm not even going to look at the chat because probably hate flowing in on Intel. And look, I've never owned Intel shares. If you have, I could understand that. But at the same time, they cut the dividend. It's not that stock anymore. There's many better names. But Intel being depressed, as we just went over that graphic, I think that would be my pick.
It might have a new level
because of the levels that we're at. You got a base, right? I mean, Palantir had this epic rise, but it also fell back and went below its direct listed price into $7.
Like, it's worth remembering, these price levels on Intel is exactly, this is pretty much where it was barcoding. That said, it did have already one good rally off of this 25 area, right? This was a place to be buying it. Obviously, it didn't hold out. And we went over this before. I was a buyer of Intel at 25. I bought a couple of times. I sold a couple of times, and I held on to 25% both of those times. and I still kind of believe in it. There was a question in the chat, would NVIDIA, well, it wasn't a question, it was more a comment in the chat about NVIDIA potentially buying Intel. NVIDIA is probably going to do some M&A because they have a bunch of cash. I don't see why they would do Intel. I could see them, maybe find some small AI company, maybe you find some small nuclear name. There's lots of things that NVIDIA could do. I don't necessarily see why they would do this. And there keep being these rumors about this combination or that combination with Intel. I'm not necessarily sure I'd be gambling or betting on that. I think you bet on that the worst has happened, and then you sort of move on from there. And yeah, B-Bot's got it right as well in the chat. Waiting on that CEO announcement. That's exactly the kind of thing that can get it going because they've basically been left behind technology-wise, clearly. So, there's a lot to watch. There's a good point in here, Bry Ha, No More Chips Act. I think that's been putting it under pressure. But, if you make that argument, that hasn't been hurting MU very much. So you got to look at it from that standpoint, too. Chip Act's being gone helps it go down. Micron has not had that problem whatsoever, as Micron's been able to sort of bounce off of those lows and hold from higher lows. I present you a good level on Micron right here at that 84.
Interesting name over there. Okay, any opinions on any of those names? They're on the desk. I don't know where you want to take this conversation, Brendo and Sharif there, but I think we just talked about a couple names, Shopify and Intel. Anything on the radar on that graphic?
Yeah, Nick W. With a super chat there, $5. Shout out to Nick W. asking for some picks. So why don't we just get right into this and talk a little bit about, as you said, you guys threw out a couple of ideas there. Why don't we bring in Joe maybe to start us off here and get some Joe ideas going into 2025.
Joe ideas.
Absolutely. I'm going to keep it extremely simple here, guys. Top 3 picks. Let me pull up my chart here. And I'm going to start off here with Apple. I mean, we talk about this AI supercycle, the 16 coming out with Apple Intelligence. So, I mean, we're still off these all-time highs here, only about 7% or less. But, I mean, once those iPhone sales start to pick up and we get that full release, as Sharif always says, of Apple Intelligence, this is something that I believe is going to continue to appreciate in price. And we mentioned about all the inflows coming into the market and into ETFs. Well, we know that Apple is in numerous amounts of ETFs and is going to be the beneficiary of these inflows. So Apple is going to be my number 1 pick. Even though it is one of my smaller holdings, I am extremely bullish here on Apple, especially with that iPhone supercycle apparently coming into place. I know a lot of people need to upgrade their iPhones. There's usually about a 4 or 5 year turnaround rate within the iPhone. So, I mean, what Dan Ives from Wedbush likes to often say is that, yeah, I mean, with everybody upgrading their phones, I think Apple is one of the top looks for me. And then I mentioned not too long ago, and it's kind of going off grid here, I mean, liquid natural gas and Canadian resources. We don't usually talk about Canadian stocks too much, but Enbridge is something that I'm going to be looking to play as well too, because drill baby drill, I think, is going to be the theme over here north of the border as well too. So just unlocking the power of Canada's natural resources, I think it can be an extremely good play in the coming months and years as well too. And finally, I'm going to go with Google here, all right? So Google, guys, we got Willow, Gemini, and Waymo. This thing is absolutely unstoppable, and it's almost put that antitrust in the rearview mirror as we start to recover and not far off of those all-time highs as well too. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how Google can benefit from this AI supercycle, Waymo, and kind of this new quantum computing phase that everybody seems to be liking to indulge in. So those would be my top 3 picks right now. Don't want to be all too tech heavy, but Apple being number 1, looking to unlock some power in the energy sector, and then also trying to get like a numerous amount of plays here with Google from AI, quantum computing, and this autonomous driving that we're really looking forward to adapting as society, I think.
Alphabet pick in there, so there's no question. I think one of the reasons why The reasons why you like it for that quantum, it leads me to one of my three. And look, I probably, you haven't guessed, GE Verona is one of my three. I probably said it, we talked about like 3 times today. So I like GE Verona, I like it for the nuclear play, and it's continuation plays that I like. And so if I think there's a continuation in some of the nuclear names, and you go to the more safer plays on dips, that's where I go to GE or GE Vernova. And if I want to think the same thing in the quantum, now I own a bunch of Alphabet, I'll probably be buying them as well. But I present you forward PE of 20 with IBM. The other safe play in the quantum space, if you have to ride out the 15 years, why not do it with a dividend and a strong stock? So I like buying dips in here. It's a gobble up at the 200. It's right now at the 50 period on IBM. So this is the other one that I absolutely love. I think it's a pretty safer play, and when you get a rebound in the quantum names and more of a long-term look, you get that exposure. You probably can look at those D waves and the others and think if one of them cracks, fantastic. And then the last one for me is very simple. I think there's going to be a bunch of deal making. I think it's going to be a better environment for all of financials. Got to keep it very simple, and that's just XLV, XLF. Just financial ETF. Keep it very, very simple. Deal making's going up, more volatility this year, so trading is going to be a big deal. And then also throw in the fact that you're going to have a loosening up with the new administration in financial regulation. So, I think you keep it very simple there. But I love that Google pick, and I kind of go with IBM as mine in the same space.
Yeah, good stuff there, Neil, for sure. Sean, what do you think?
All right, a lot of people with surprise, I guess, still in the chat. Yeah, hi guys, we're here. It's the market is closed and we're still here. We're doing a 2025 rundown for you. So we heard from Joe, we heard from Neil. Who wants to go next? Sharif?
I can go.
Sure.
Yeah, so Michael Noss brought this up already. He talked about nat gas. He didn't, though, have his 200 moving average on the chart to kind of explain what he was talking about here. So let's just zoom out. This is the daily chart. If I can show the chart, Fabian, on nat gas. The blue line is the 200 exponential moving average. And every single time, going back to January 2023, when we got that death cross between the 50 and the 200, the nat gas futures has rejected over and over and over that 200 period break. That is, of course, until this happened over here. Look how much time we are spending above that 200. In fact, what I love about this chart is you came back and you cleared the 200 by some distance, and then you retraced only to defend that level. That is a good sign for me. And we're close to the 200 price-wise, in the sense that if you get in here, your stop loss on a closing basis below that 200 could be sound, and it's not too far away, so you wouldn't have to risk all that much. And believe me, this thing's been beat up so much. I'm not saying it's going to move up, but it has a lot of room to move up. Now, that's the technical case. What's the fundamental case here? What is changing now that's all of a sudden going to make nat gas in vogue? And I'll submit to you that it has a lot to do with data centers. There's only so much nuclear energy around, and so much of the technology, especially with SMRs, small modular reactors, is so nascent and hasn't been developed. You need a short-term fix or short-term solution for the energy that you need, Brendo. Nat gas could be it.
Is that going to be an individual play or just a general theme, or how you gonna actually?
I think that I'm going to put this in the swing account. We got the long term, we got the swing. This one, to me, it's unproven and a bit more high risk. It deserves to be in the swing.
Love it. Sean, you want to go, or I can jump in, or?
No, I'm just going to, we're going to keep track of this. So Joe's already decided, we decided this. We're going to keep track of these positions. And then at the end of the year, I mean, we're going to have to like a trade like that for Sharif if there's a time on it. We'll try to figure out the best way to actively do that. But I think that'd be really fun, like Trader TV Live's picks for 2025.
No, I was saying this to Sharif yesterday, and we should do it kind of like.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And then we can update it every week or whatever. We'll just say like, okay, like Sean's down 14%, like, Joe's up 58%, stuff like that.
That's a great idea.
Would be fun. All right, Brendan.
All right. Ramin wants to do her picks too, so.
Perfect.
Maybe we'll get
Let's
Ramin.
go, Ramin.
As well.
Yes.
It's worth noting, guys, if you jump to my screen just real quick, significant, I guess, bounce underway here in Bitcoin right now. When we came on this morning, we were talking about 92. We're all the way back to 94 and 95. So this is going to be mine, or one of mine. Anyway, so I might have just missed a great opportunity. I think with everything that happened going into the end of the year, you got to own some sort of version of this, whether it's Bitcoin itself or whether it's the ETFs. IBIT, even here in Toronto, BTCC, you got to own. If you don't already, you need to buy it. If you already do, you need to buy more. And we might have just missed a great opportunity this morning for anyone who didn't have orders in. My other Tesla.
Oh,
on the
right.
Yeah,
on
Brandon
the
was dangerous.
autonomous side of things, Elon gets there first, in my opinion. On the AI side of things, we were talking about with Jensen. Somebody was saying in the chat, talk about Tesla. Okay, we'll talk about Tesla. Jensen was even saying Elon's crushing it as far as the AI side of things right now. I haven't spent a lot of time on Grok, but I'm going to in the next little while here. Just to test it out, but I mean, there's a great consolidation. There's a great level coming into play here, 360 to 350.
They're never
I
gonna
think
be
you got to
able
own
to
Tesla
monetize it.
at some point this year.
I completely agree with that. And I saw that interview that you were talking about Jensen basically pounding the table about how much Elon has set everything up in the right way, whether it's data collection from the umpteen amount of cars that he has on the road, or whether it's the infrastructure internally to be able to synthesize that data. He's done everything the right way. Now, granted, he's a customer. He's buying a whole lot of GPUs, so it's in Jensen's incentive, obviously, to speak well about him. But I don't think he's a guy that throws around words lightly.
Yeah, Sean, I apologize if I took one of yours, but hit it.
No, I was going to say, I mean, congratulations, bang. I mean, I like all of those plays. I was going to say to myself, too, maybe IBIT was going to be a play. I wanted to ask you, actually, Brendan, as well. Are you thinking, and you did sort of say some names there, are you talking about maybe just Bitcoin in general, or would you like to maybe split it up between BTC and Ethereum? Are you looking at, an ETF per se, or are we just talking about BTC, simply put, the coin?
And it really doesn't matter, I don't think. I own BTCC here in Toronto.
Right.
I think IBIT's a great option as well. Since the addition of IBIT in the US, BTCC has completely gone to sleep. Sharif and I were talking about that yesterday. The liquidity's gone. The volume's basically gone. So obviously the focus is more on the US side. I will most likely be buying IBIT at some point.
Right.
I think today, as I said, we might have just missed a great opportunity at the low there. But we'll see. We might get a retest. So I mean, I think, to answer your question.
Okay, yeah, because that basically was one of my plays was going to be Bitcoin. But I've turned it up, and I'll give you one of mine, and then we'll go back. I think we're trying to do roughly 3 each. So maybe if we Joe's was Enbridge, Google, and Apple.
Yeah, I'm looking for some continue, Sean. I'm looking for something, and then I'm gonna post it to you.
Enbridge was all good, right? Enbridge was a great pick. All right, I'm going to stay on the same sort of path as that. I mentioned this a couple times. I do think Bitcoin is a great tool there. I'll join Brendan in that. But if we're going to look for an equity, I think something that's could be a good trade in Joe's world this year. I'm looking at Coinbase. I mean, I just think here, I have a weekly chart up of Coinbase. It has been a nice drop, a nice fall back in. But when I look at crypto and I say the high of crypto was 107, 108. Now you're going to bounce off 92, 93, maybe potentially hold that. I think Coinbase has the way to the upside right here. If this cryptocurrency reserve, the Bitcoin reserve, actually starts to come into play, people got to scramble and pick this up. I've been trading on Coinbase a little bit. The fees are not cheap, but guess what? There is no alternative. I mean, obviously there is. There's going to be lots of different, you could trade on IBKR, you could trade on Wealthsimple over here in Canada. There are lots of alternatives, but Coinbase right now has a big percentage of the business. And I mean, look, a lot of the Bitcoins being held are in wallets that are never moving, so you're not getting that transaction volume. But I really just think that with this pullback in Coinbase, a forward PE of 40, obviously it's quite hefty, but for a technology that is relatively new, I mean, right now we have Buy It Now, you have PayPal, you have all that when you're on Shopify, all these little things. What about when Coinbase gets a Buy It Now button? We're able to sort of switch back and forth easily, transferring of funds. It's already sort of there. I like Coinbase. There's a 200 period moving average right there on the daily chart of 230. We're not so far away from that. We will start tracking some of these plays as we move on. So one of my plays for the upcoming year will be Coinbase. So, all right. We have more to go. It's 11:12 right now. Go ahead.
Before we get to it, I have to apologize. I've moved my physio to the middle of the day. So I got my picks in for you guys. And I actually think there was a really good point in the chat. I don't know if we can do this.
Right.
But if we're doing a spreadsheet, some of the viewers have asked if there's a way for them to participate. So I think, put their picks in as well. that's very tricky for us to do, because then all of a sudden you're going to have a spreadsheet with like 100 or 1,000 people. That being said, that doesn't stop everybody from engaging and maybe talking about your picks in the chat. Like, you want to throw in the name that you like, certainly. But if we open it up, all of a sudden Joe would be sitting there taking 1,000 people's.
No. I mean, we can do something like that.
But discussion of it, I think, is a good idea. There's nothing wrong with it. Throw your picks in there as well as everyone's giving theirs. I also happen to like. I like that. I like the Bitcoin pick. But I do think, if Bitcoin tends to go, things like Coin and Robinhood, because I was actually deciding when I wanted the financials, I was deciding. I was looking at Hood. I was actually looking at also at IBKR, like what's going to be good in the financial aspect. But those are very fantastic picks. But I do have to run. Got to get my physio in, and we'll see.
Yeah, I got a lunch date in about an hour, so I'm getting out of here as well. So let's get this going. Thank you. Stay well. All right, it is now time for everybody's picks. They're waiting for this one person to make their picks. Well, there's two. There's Ramin, and then we have Adara. So I'm interested to hear on Adara. I think the one that's put in maybe the most work into figuring out what her picks are going to be. So Adara, let's hear yours.
I spent some time last night doing some anchored VWAPs and some time frame analysis. So I mentioned Boeing. I said I like Boeing. I'll like Boeing even better.
You don't get to
if we can stop this trend of lower highs and lower lows, and if we can get above 8,200. Like you see here for BA, and I kind of mentioned that we're floating near that anchored VWAP actually from the start of 2024 when we had that little incident with the door falling off. So I think if we can keep the doors on, if we can keep the Dawn soap away from the manufacturing, if we can keep the people from not, going on strike, then I think we can have that plane dropping money instead of doors. Then here's my number two. Are we doing all the picks at once, or how are we doing? Okay, so I'll do this is not going to shock anybody. What I tried to do here is look at names that I've already had some exposure to on the intraday basis. With that in mind, my second pick is Eli Lilly. I know, shock, but I want to explain why. So, I know we have a double top on the daily chart. I'm fully aware of that. We have lower highs, also aware of that. But what I didn't realize is some of these levels that I've liked intraday are showing up like crazy on the weekly chart as well. So if you look at this here, this is like some nice support here on that 718 level. We also, if you even further back, there's some support resistance around that 627 level. Now, I want to talk about, for me, the biggest thing with this Eli Lilly thesis. I drew this anchored VWAP here. This is from that drop that we had on earnings. This is the weekly chart. This is from that drop we had on earnings going back to, this would be October 2024. So the high of day here on earnings was basically going to be around this. This was the earnings week, that 860 level. 860, I think we have to break above. But before we break above 860, I want to see A, break above the anchored VWAP from earnings around 792. And B, I want to see us break above the 845 level. 845 has been a huge level intraday. I've traded it breakout into it on an intraday basis. So I think the fact that what I really like about this is you're going to see this in my last pick as well. There's a really interesting way that you can see how some of these levels intraday actually show up in wider time frames than you would even realize. So Lilly I like us along with the fact that we have made a higher low since that 718 bounce, and the fact that I think if we can clear that 846, it'll be a beautiful thing. Now, last but not least, drum roll please, United Health. Let's talk about it. So here's my thing. This is the weekly. I'll show you the daily as well because I think it looks pretty clean on both. So this is here, of course, United Health, much like my first pick, Boeing, has a lot of fundamental strife, mostly in the fact that the CEO of United Healthcare was shot and killed, and this led to a whole discussion of the insurance industry. A lot of these insurance stocks sold off, including UNH. But here's the thing. On the daily chart, we are above the anchored VWAP from the day of the shooting. We're now just hovering above that level, and that's also a level of previous resistance on the daily chart going back to May 2024. So I like this. Now our next level that we need to clear above is 557. So 557 was our previous all-time high. On the daily chart, that was actually like a really, or even an intraday basis, when we'd interact with that level on the way down from the shooting, that 557 gave you a lot of opportunities. It would be a great bounce level, be a great rejection level. And if you could see in the weekly chart, bang, 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 bang. We've had multiple bounces off that level. Then we held it beautifully. So if we can get back above 557.40, I think it's a great look. We're still not even that far from all-time highs. And on the weekly, we're also actually above the anchored VWAP from the shooting. So, and even too, like if you look at this, we've actually made 3 consecutive green weeks on UNH, despite the pretty bad beating we took with the shooting. So I think the fact that we have had these 3 consecutive green weeks, I think there's some nice positive momentum coming into the name. And I love this great bounce as well sell off of that 474 level. So that is my case. BALLYUNH, guys. That's my look.
Yeah, I like that.
I know, I like to think, you know what I was going to say also is... Yo, what's up, Neil? Neil. Hey, Neil, how's it going, Neil?
Neil?
You doing well, my guy over there? No, I was going to say those are big Dow components. So, I mean, I was going to say if you like some of those, like all three of those are some of the three biggest names in the Dow Jones. So I just wanted to call up DIA here just to give you a quick little look because I like those plays. I like the Dow. I've been putting some money into diamonds as well. And I'm actually using diamonds. I'm just using DIA because, you know, we got to have a little diamond hands here, you know. But no, the Dow Jones, again, I like the exposure there, the top 30 stocks, all three of those big names there. So good pick, Sedera, for that one. And again, I like the fact that it's not so technological based, as a lot of our picks have been major cap tech names so far. So good couple names there. I like them. What do you guys think on the desk?
Completely. We were just saying Bitcoin, guys, just going green. My chart delayed here, but yeah, I mean, this bounce continues here off that 91, 92. I think a bit of a theme here across the board. I mean, that was really all we had. I mean, let's maybe answer a few questions here. We did promise.
I've only dropped that one pick over here.
It was three, not 30.
I
want to switch my picks up. So
hold on a second.
No, time out.
Hold on a second. Before that happens.
I seen Brendo go with Tesla and Bitcoin.
No,
so those
what do you mean? Hold on a second. Why is that?
I want to build my acronym here. I want to build my acronym because we know we have the likes of Fang here. So I'm going to switch not crazy up, all right? But my acronym is MEAT, okay? Meta, Enbridge, Apple, and Tesla. Those are my picks there. That's what I'm going for.
Wait a second. No, my guy.
Hey. We switched it up. We dropped Google. We now acquired Meta, and our acronym here is MEAT.
So, okay, so your number one pick that we went on the first time was Google.
Yeah.
So now that is now out, or?
It's out. It's gone. It's MEAT now. It's
yeah. It's out
the door.
Fail.
Well,
Fail.
Hey, I have to compete with.
That's not competing.
That's competing. I have to. I'm sorry.
I might have to add Google now. But I'm a little.
We have to come up with more defined rules, clearly.
No, but Brendan, the thing is that the name of the company is not even Google. He could have just used Alphabet in MEAT.
Oh, I could have.
I mean, this is the thing.
This is why Apple.
This is why no matter what happens, we continue to take our talents to Palantir. Because all of this back and forth nonsense that continues to happen, we stay strong in our belief. The number one pick for this guy's account this year is going to be Palantir, because never fear, everybody, Palantir days have come and gone a little bit, right? I mean, we see this, Brendan. We see the top of $84 here on the chart. We see a dip down back into $68. But hey, if we were worried about this name, we would have got out of this name a long time ago. We had bought this name over here at $9. It went all the way up to $40. And we were like, this is great. The hat was acquired. And then all of a sudden, it dipped right back down in, and then it started to base out. And guess what's happening now with Palantir, everybody? Unmatched leadership in AI. They have Foundry, they have Gotham, they have AIP. And guess what? It's sticky revenue time. And you know what sticky revenues mean, Sharif? Okay, hold on a second. I just typed in daily and it went to D. Sticky revenues. They're not going anywhere. Their revenues are coming from where? Someone that has unlimited money. And I want to thank everybody in the United States for that one, because as long as Palantir is still alive and Donald Trump is around, this world is going to be an exciting one as it continues to be. And guess what? A lot of the contracts for Palantir are coming from the United States government. Not just that government, governments from all around the world. The best part about Palantir is it's already been approved. So that's the one big thing about their AIP, the integration from big data into platforms. Palantir has that. It's operating. It's revenue. It is there. This is not something that's in beta. This is not quantum computing where Jensen can come out and say, this is 15 years away. BS on that, but it's not true for Palantir. Palantir is here right now. Their results are proven. The profitability and growth is here right now. The problem is, of course, valuation. When the NASDAQ comes down, you're going to get hit when you have PEs like they do in Palantir. But you know what? For me, that is fine. Palantir is the play for 2025. And again, there is execution risk here. If Palantir is unable to gain all the contracts that we're thinking they do, then yeah, we do have some south side action. But at the same time, I think this dip down here, what's up, Sharif, in Palantir is the play. You need to get on board with this name. We know Alex Karp is friends with our good friend Elon Musk as well. We've had people change their picks to Tesla. People should be changing their picks to Palantir. This is the #1 play for me and what's going to make me win
Katina
this
man,
challenge.
I got a question for you, brother. So we all heard the passion with which you expressed your pick there for Palantir. Is there a specific stock or sector, Katina man, that you don't like for 25?
Fabian, how's it going, my guy?
Fabian.
Coffee action going on over there? Oh, wow. Is that blueberry? Maybe, okay, so what a sector that, like this guy. All right, sector that I don't like this year. I was gonna, you know what I was actually gonna say? And it's, yeah, well, weed stocks I don't like any year basically anymore because that's been a complete disaster. You know what's a good one here? What about energy? What about traditional oil and gas? What about looking at a name like USO here? This is just a 5-minute chart. I just think with a lot of the talk right now about uranium and some of the new spaces for energy, we've seen a dip down there in the XLE. That's USO. Oil's actually holding pretty good. I'm a little bit nervous, guys, underneath the 200 period moving average here for the XLE, underneath the 50 period as well. I'm a little worried about traditional energy. Neil gave a name, Chevron. We sort of talked about that one. If that can, I don't know where, CVX. If Chevron doesn't hold that 140 area right down there, then yeah, you do, have a little bit of downside pressure in the space. So I look to that. I think that with the new administration, Sharif, we're not sure where we're going to go with some of the fracking or what this means for the current environment. So yeah, I would say maybe energy. I know you went sort of with nat gas. That would be a little bit of a different play for me on that. But I just think traditional, some of these bigger names, XOM, CVX and all that, I don't think it's the right time to chase yield right now. So I would hold off on some of these plays. And Michael Noss gave another pick there with TAN. I don't know if we're there yet. I mean, I would rather wait to hear about some more incentives into this space in order to grow the space. So I think it's too expensive right now for people to be putting up various solar panels. So I would say some of the energy, I'm not super excited about it. Because Sharif, I mean, what do you think about that for oil? Like, we had a lot of controversy right now in 2024, and oil didn't really have the sort of explosive move we had right on live on our show. I'm not sure when it was, Brendan and Sharif, when we had JC on, but I think that was in the summertime. Yeah. XLE really hasn't performed as well as we had thought it would since those days.
And to be honest with you, Katina, man, the more we drill, obviously, and Joe Biden just signed a prohibition on offshore drilling. Trump responded immediately, said he was going to basically remove that in 2 weeks' time. So the more we drill, the lower the price of the barrel is. Obviously, that is kind of just basic economics, Brendo.
I don't get this solar idea. I know Michael Moss was talking about it. It's purely technical. It must be because, I mean, he's been talking about wind specifically, not the same thing, but wind is just a disaster, and the effects on the overall environment from those huge windmills are terrible. So
and we experienced that firsthand in this province under the previous government that went and expanded wind everywhere, put them in farms where farmers didn't want them, put them everywhere where they weren't really as effective. And we're talking about a legacy utilities company that really isn't doing as well as it is anticipated.
Drive up Highway 10. There's just an hour's worth as you go north of the city of wind farms. Tons of them. Downside for me, I'll say China. I think there's way too much unknown with Trump coming in and what's going to happen around that. So you can't own anything in China. Sean.
As far as China is concerned, I think that China has a lot of political headways, right? We were still uncertain on what the tariffs may bring. All right, so we've had 2 picks there. We've had Palantir, and did we give, what was our other pick? No, I wasn't Google. I was Palantir. I've already forgotten because I was so geared up for Palantir. I'm debating on what we wanted to do with Intel now as another play. So I just sort of wanted to see I know Sharif's had some opinions on this play as well. Before we prophetically announce our third play, any thoughts on Intel?
Intel.
Coinbase it was. That's right.
Okay, so I have thoughts on Intel, Sean. And sadly, I never invested in the company, but I've always kept an eye on it, always hoping, that they could catch a tailwind, whether it was government money, the umpteen amount of dollars that they got from the government, or whether it was just because U.S. companies would buy made in America, so to speak. But we've seen that circumvented, Sean. We've seen Taiwan Semi open up their plant in Arizona and other places as well. And we've seen other chip companies that are non-American by historically get government money from the U.S. So I don't know if I like Intel. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is they really have focused on CPUs. And we've watched as central processing units have fallen out of favor for these parallel processing units like GPUs. And Jensen just dropped a supercomputer that cost $3,000. Now, granted, it is obviously a little bit more expensive than your regular PC, runs $1,000, $1,500, but we're not talking proportionately more money versus the amount of compute that you get from this. You can run language models on it. It can do training as well as inference, and you can string them together. So you can put 2, 3, 4 and scale upwards. You don't have to expend money at the top tier all at one time. You can move your way up as the project gets proven. So I don't know if I like the technology from Intel. I don't like the way Intel's been run. And they just don't have a proven track record. So I need to see something.
Well said. And that's exactly what I was going to add is they haven't shown us anything. Yeah. So until they do, how can you? Joe, downside pick.
Same as you there, Brando. China, I just think this is an uninvestable space here. We've had stimulus go into the economy multiple times here, and look how it's been perceived on the street. So China is my downfall. That's something that I would not look to be investing into 2025. I have my chart up here on Alibaba Group here on Alibaba Holdings here, if we can pull it up. And I mean, this, as you can see here, folks, this is when that stimulus was announced, and sure enough, we have now retraced that whole movement to the top side. So that is going to be my pick for 2025. I am going to be avoiding the Chinese ADRs.
Yeah, I actually have two that I'm thinking of. And so, yes, sorry, they are both spready. I kind of was gravitating toward names that I've seen some trends on. We're going to start here with Adobe.
You're muted. You're muted.
Oh, I'm not. I'm not muted. Oh, I wasn't. Oh. Was I? Okay.
Okay, what's up, everybody?
She's good now.
Let's right the ship. Are we good? Can you guys hear her? All right, go back.
Sorry about that, guys. I don't really know. I apologize. We have the Adobe. So I'm sorry, Neil. I know he liked this one to the long side. Here's the weekly on Adobe. We just broke below this previous support resistance level of 446. We are on our 5th straight week to the downside. That is not a great look. We have really struggled since that earnings report on December 9th. So I think with all of these lower highs, with the fact that we continue to also now have lower lows on the weekly, and the fact that this is our second straight red year in a row, it's a 12-month year. We had a pretty rough year there. Now we're poised to have a second red year. I think Adobe looks kind of stagnant at these levels. So I think ADBE, I'm sorry, I know Neil liked this one to the upside. He's not here, but I think I like this to the downside. He did mention like this 300 level. I think 380 could maybe be support potentially, but it looks pretty rough here for ADBE, just given the fact that it cannot, as Neil would say, get off the schneid. Now I have NFLX. So I want to talk about this one because I know one thing too is, again, much like Adobe, 5 straight weeks to the downside. 5 straight red weeks. And if you look at the daily chart, this thing is double topped. I know I liked Lilly, which also double topped, but Lilly double topped and then held support. Netflix double topped while it was making 5 straight red weeks. So in my opinion, sure, it's giving me dirty eyes over here. No.
I'm very surprised. I like what you're saying.
Thank you. Yeah. I think this looks kind of like it's headed to the downside, and I think there's some clear, and this is on the weekly and the daily, if we can bounce at 855, I don't think it's a bad look at all, but I think there's just this massive run up, which was aided by the fact that we had this great earnings report, then a couple of weeks later we had the election. If we can't hold this upward momentum, I think if we can't hold this 850 anyway, I think this Netflix could really plummet to the downside. This 900 level has been really interesting. I've been watching NFLX, and I've had this thing I've said for a long time. If a spready name does not have any, if it can't reject or bounce off of a $100 level, that's weird to me. This Netflix has had no real pull with the $900 level. It doesn't care that much. Like I've seen Netflix at 700 has been nuts. Netflix at 900 was like, I don't really care. So this $900 level, for whatever reason, it does not really seem to give a hoot. So I think if we break below that this 857 area, RIP NFLX. That's my take. So Netflix and ADB.
That's a hot take, Adair.
Yeah,
I think that's a pretty hot take, especially with streaming and sports too. We know that we had the Jake Paul fight.
True.
We had that Jake Paul fight just brought in record amounts of viewers, and now we're starting to stream live sports. So that's an interesting take there, I think, on Netflix. Yeah.
No, I gotta agree with one of Adair's points. So, Joseph, you bring in the live sports component, which I originally thought was going to be a really good tailwind, and you know, logically, it seems like it is. But Joseph, do you know how much these contracts now cost? NBA, how much Amazon had to outbid Warner Brothers. It's getting more and more and more expensive. Now, that may not necessarily be a bad thing if they can monetize it properly, but you know, that's a huge CapEx expenditure that they got to take on their balance sheet, and it better bring in money. And that's the thing. So I think this is kind of like one of those double-edged swords where it could be really, really good, or it could kind of weigh them down. We'll have to see. And Brenda, you had some comments about this.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, you know, I was on Netflix last night, and this continues to be my experience with Netflix from a whole, is I get so bored just clicking through all of the options to watch that I just end up leaving and just saying, I don't even want to do this anymore, and I just get up and go and do something else.
Too much content.
It's like the amount of it's overwhelming how much content there is to possibly watch and then to actually find something. So you were saying, you know, it's just those viral, you know, very well marketed shows that everybody's watching that you jump on just to watch that. But if you simply just click on Netflix and just start sifting through mindlessly everything that's available, you just get to a point where you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore, and you just leave.
Shout out to Ram Ram. She watched Dubai Bling yesterday on Netflix. I still have it, so we'll have to catch up. But that builds on the point. Ram Ram tells me about Dubai Bling. I tell somebody else about Dubai Bling, and it just gets viral. And then all of a sudden, you're either on 1, 2, 3 movies, or you're paying for Netflix.
So I mean, I agree with what you guys were saying as well on the sports side.
One last thing here, Sharif. Sorry, and I mean, what we were just talking about, it's bringing in people. So now you're kind of bringing in a whole new customer base. So what do you think that can do for Netflix's subscribers, right? So now you got those live sports going. What can that do from a subscriber standpoint? I think that attracts a lot more viewers, in my opinion.
Didn't they stop reporting?
They stopped reporting new viewer additions, but they're still reporting new viewers to their paid tier because they monetize those guys more.
Right. So we'll see. I mean, let's see. It's a great point, but you know they're going to have to show it. So, Sean, final thoughts?
I think Netflix is a raging bull. I would not short that thing by any chance. I mean, they just launched the largest weekly show of all time. Does anybody know what that show is? The largest running weekly show by viewership of all time. Just happened 3 days ago.
Which one is that, Sean?
WW.
It's WWE. They now have WWE Raw.
Like,
are we forgetting
like
about
Monday Night Raw,
what
Friday Night SmackDown? Like these guys are streaming sports now.
They dominate. Like WWE is a money generating cash machine that has gone nowhere but through the roof. People used to pay for WWE's on demand. No, they're just their video on demand service. They used to pay, I don't know, it was $10 or $20 a month just for that service alone. And now you're going to be streaming all of the pay-per-views. They have Raw, SmackDown, all of that. Plus, honestly, man, the NFL kicking through there, all these fights. I think Netflix has. Plus, not only that, the other thing that no one's mentioned yet is when they split.
Yep.
Dang.
Oh boy.
Yes, sir.
Be short at peril. But I like the call. I mean, it is tough. It's tough to make short calls. I mean, it's a great call. All of the reasons for that. It's like what I said about Palantir. They're very expensive. If companies can't realize revenues from Gotham and Foundry and AIP, then they're going to scale back on the new investments going into new technology. So to that point about how expensive it's getting, like Sharif was mentioning there, about the bill they're paying to Netflix or from Netflix to NFL, to WWE, if they can't gain enough revenues from the ad-supported tier or just the monthly memberships, then yeah, it is going to be a negative headwind. But the thing about that too is there's so much more addressable market. I mean, we just had Raheem Alani come on and talk about how income levels and all that living conditions, everything in India keep on improving. Netflix is still a North American story, man, and wait till we get more expansion in Netflix. Randy, Netflix, I like the stock. One more pick for me before we go. Okay, hey Randy, how's it going? Give me a pick for not too long-winded, because that's probably what I'm here for. What play you like? We've already had Tesla as a pick from Brendan for the year. You may pick Rivian. I don't know.
Nope.
Is there a name that you're looking at for a possible investment here?
I'm looking at energy stocks.
Right. I knew
So
that.
we've just had a ban on wind turbines. We've had offshore drilling ban. So the energy companies, the renewables and otherwise, may take a bit of a hit here. We've got an overflood of cheap solar panels from elsewhere. There's a lot of energy in play. XOM, one of my favorites. Chevron in the fold as well, but energy stocks going to be a lot of flux this year, depending on policy, depending on foreign trade. I'm going to pick energy stocks.
Great call there. I went the other way. So
That's okay.
It's not.
I'm with you. Like GE, Vestas, all these companies that make massive wind turbines. All of a sudden, there's wind farms that are like.
Okay. So wait. So what? Are you talking just about you want to get an ETF? Is there a name XOM? I missed.
There are ETFs, XOM on its own.
Okay.
But there's going to be a lot of, I think, tumultuous activity
So
this
just the
year
oil
with
and gas
energy,
space you like a little
but also renewables.
Right. I know. That's what I'm saying.
So there's lots of renewable ETFs out there
Yeah.
that I think we're going to see lots of
Opinion on solar names?
activity.
we talked
Canadian
about, I
solar
think
is
it's
one of the
still-
ones I'm still watching, but
TSLR,
there's other ones. Tesla's in the solar game as well. There's other companies out there that are in the game. It's
If
not
you wanna
looking so
play
rosy
energy,
right
why don't
now.
we just play Tesla?
You can, but you can't.
Right, because there's so many more.
There's
parts to it.
there's exactly. There's a lot of moving parts to the name. Elon, aside from that,
I mean, there's government headwinds.
no, energy stocks in general, renewables and otherwise, are on my radar.
Why did somebody tell me the other day, and I actually Googled this, and you tell me if it's true or not. He said a lot of people are switching over now from, like, in my house, we have gas-powered...
Natural gas.
Natural gas, yeah, of course. Natural gas on the...
Hot water heater, your furnace.
Yep, I was going to say laundry, the dryer.
Dryer.
I was like, washing machine? No, dryer.
They're moving
What's the word I'm looking for? But then the guy told me that he's like, and the stove is nat gas as well.
Yep.
He had said that, because he's in construction, he said there's been a big shift over to...
Heat pumps.
Exactly. Heat pumps and hydro.
Yes.
I always thought, like, I looked at my bill from Enbridge, which is one of the picks again, or has it changed? And my Enbridge bill is always a hell of a lot lower than my Toronto Hydro bill. And
So-
I'm just wondering, has that changed a little bit? Has hydro become a little more affordable now?
It depends where you live.
Okay.
There's an abundance of renewables right now. In fact, in some countries, there's a net zero for electricity.
Okay. So it's a
Meaning
carbon tax.
they have so much production and not enough usage that they can't get rid of it all. So, but there's carbon taxes on top of that. So you've got, people not wanting to burn natural gas, carbon emissions. They have nat gas washer dryers, not gas. Heat pump natural.
Yeah, of course.
Dryers.
Dryers. Yeah, I know.
It takes longer. The cycle takes a little bit longer, but it uses no.
And there's tankless water heaters.
Yep.
Everything.
So there's all kinds of renewable, coherent things coming out. New technologies coming out. Heat pumps, especially, are huge in Europe. Here we're a little behind.
That's what he was saying. All the new builds were going heat pump, and I was just like, wow.
Which is
I
all
always
fine and dandy until the hydro goes out.
Right, and that's what someone in the chat I just saw there. They said that's the problem with electricity in that form, is that it's very environmental, disruptive.
Well, if
to
you
the
live in a
environment.
rural area like I do, and the electricity's on poles,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We get snowstorms and stuff, freezing rain, and so have a generator.
Yeah, it's like I don't advise bringing your gas barbecue into the house and start lighting that.
No,
if
don't
you
do
have
that.
your furnace
Please
going
don't
on
do
anymore. Do not do that. But
I think energy stocks are in my fold this year to watch, renewables and otherwise.
Okay, before we go on, we're going to try to wrap this thing up. I'm going to have my third pick right now. So I've started with Palantir, which is obvious and an aggressive play, but I like Palantir. I like the continuation on that. I picked Coinbase because I like crypto. I like transacting. I like trading. I like, just the fact that they've built what they've built, and now that's the platform that is, worldwide, Coinbase. And again, with some of the legislation, we had Gary Gensler is going to be moving on. We've talked about that a little bit. My third pick is going to be something that is much more conservative. Adair sort of nailed it already. I'm going to go with the diamonds. I'm going to go with the Dow Jones. We're going to go, again, you got to have a little bit of a balanced portfolio. So for me, we go 2 aggressive stocks, then we sit back and we chill. And the thing about it is, I love all of them names. This is the last 3 months right now. Amazon, Goldman Sachs. I mean, I'm loving Goldman Sachs. Give me a piece of the whole market. I'm buying the Dow Jones. I love the 30 companies. They just put in NVIDIA, just got put into that space. So I'm liking all of these companies. I was going to pick Walmart. I was going to pick Costco. I was debating Uber. There's a couple names we're throwing out here. But you know what? We've got a little bit of it all. I heard Adara and some others talk about Disney Plus when they're talking about Netflix. So there's competition, but we're going to pick the DIA and go with the diamonds to give us a little bit of a exposure to the broader market instead of just picking.
You've got to have a balanced portfolio.
Yeah, and the thing is that last year's Dow performance, this is what it looks like here. It was only 14% year to date, but we did have this little bit of a dump there at the end, giving back nearly about 8%. So if you sort of were near the highs, like we still are for the NASDAQ and the S&P 500, it wouldn't look as good. But there's the 200 period, 409. I mean, we can absorb that. If this goes down 5%, then it's giddy up. I like all the names. My third pick is the Dow Jones. What do you think about that, Randy?
I'm going to take one out of your list, and that would be Apple.
Okay, so you like Apple. That's one of Joe's
because picks. Apple has not had a lot of new innovative products recently, and I'm kind of on the fence about their progress.
So it's like in your pick would be Apple to the sell side.
Yes.
Ooh, okay. So we got a short call.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got to fight it.
Wow.
Yeah. So you're long energy, I'm short energy.
Joe, I'm telling you, there's the innovation cycle isn't where it used to be.
Here's someone who agrees with you.
I agree with you on that front, Randy. But we all know that Apple is not usually first to the dance, right? They're usually fashionably late, but they are always the king of the dance at the end of the day. That is why it is the biggest company.
Do you think
the
they can maintain that, though? I don't know. There's lots of competition out there, lots of innovative products, and their ability or their survivability to innovate, I don't know. I have my doubts.
You need to think of. Adair agreeing with Randy.
And I'm an Apple guy. We own every Apple product you can think of.
Look, I think that's the point of what Joe's getting at. I'm going to stay on the sidelines on this one because I think Apple's own don't trade. I wouldn't sell it if I owned it, and I wouldn't buy it if I didn't. But AirPods, watch, phone,
HomePods,
those Apple homes,
it's the ecosystem.
Apple TVs.
The ecosystem is just too big. iPhone, the most popular device on the planet, and amongst younger users too. Everybody wants the iPhone, so yeah, that's why we picked it.
Apple's not going to come up with anything new. We haven't seen anything new for a while.
Like what should they come up with, though?
Sorry, that isn't Apple's modus operandi. Right. Apple perfects the products. They take your idea and then they kick you out. They kick you to the side and they make the money off you.
My chief example this year was the Vision Pro.
For a long time.
The Vision Pro was just a disaster.
I mean,
but that was more of a novice product. I think that they were testing the market. They never had plans to mass produce this, Randy. They had 350,000 earmarked for all of 2024. I think they cut it short by 50,000. To me, that doesn't move the needle.
No. Yeah, and the Apple car is gone, and there's
that's
been
a smart move, right? Getting rid of
absolutely
smart move.
Look, I mean, we talk about no innovation. Okay, remember these things when these things first came out, these Apple AirPods.
Yep.
Right. I remember people saying, "Ain't no one buying these things. They're going to be falling out of people's pockets. People are going to lose these things. Nobody wants AirPods." And sure, maybe there was Beats, maybe there was this and that. But to everybody's point, Apple doesn't. These are
ubiquitous.
This is just a thing where it's like now everybody wants and has. Mm-hmm. We sat here and I said, you know what? Forget about all this connecting back and forth. We've switched over to these things, and I have
seamless.
It's been amazing. And the thing is like right now, I think innovation, They don't need to innovate anything, in my opinion.
I disagree.
Okay, so are they going to change? Okay, first of all, their phone needs a rebrand, right? I mean, I just think like this sort of squarish. I know they've changed it a little bit, but I was with my buddy the other day. He had that Samsung, the flip one. That was really cool. Like it flipped into half and you could have all your preview screens was right there. You didn't even need to open up your phone and it was like half the size.
The Fold, the Galaxy Fold.
That's probably, yeah. So I think that they could, again, to Sharif's point, it would be taking somebody else's, what someone already has in production.
And improve it, yeah.
And even, it might not even be an improvement. It has this little symbol on it. It's the symbol of a fruit. And anytime a product gets that little symbol on it, Apple is the #1 consumer company of all time.
Should we change it to a banana?
They're the most satisfactory. They're the #1 consumer company of all time as far as satisfaction is concerned. They are the #1 selling consumer item of all time.
They are a trustworthy, reliable,
But I get your point, though. Heading into the year, who knows?
Yeah, I think there's some headwinds there.
Recent dip, though, giving it an attractive valuation. Okay, we got to wrap this thing up very, very soon. So I think we pretty much have all three. Your picks were short Apple, long energy.
Energy and renewables.
And there was something else in there. We'll get it all written down. I think what we'll wind up doing, guys, is we'll wind up basically, Joe, I don't know if you're going to do the spreadsheet or who's going to do it. Basically, why don't we just use the opening prices of Friday. So Friday will be open tomorrow.
Yep.
So why don't we just have the opening prices there for tomorrow's trade? So we don't know what the headlines are. We don't know anything. So we buy GE Vernova tomorrow for Neil. We buy the Dow for me, all this kind of stuff. And that's what we grow on, and we'll get that all figured out. I think that's a great plan.
Yeah, we'll get those all documented, Sean, and then we'll create a spreadsheet and we'll track them on that front. So I think that's a good idea.
All right, we'll do that. Let's go back to the desk.
All right, I think we're good. Let's wrap this up, guys. It's been a lot of fun. We had a couple of guests. Thanks to Raheem. Thanks to Michael Noss for coming through. Lots of great ideas discussed. We appreciate everyone joining us on a day when, hey, the market's closed. If you haven't pulled up your chart yet, but yeah, a lot of things to look forward to. A lot of themes I think to watch for going into 2025. And as always, we will be right here every single day that the market is open. So if you haven't done so, hit subscribe, hit the like button, come back tomorrow morning, and we'll see you then. Thanks, guys.
Hey.